Chapter 750. Buzz. In the center of Camp 7, an ancient transmission formation, which had been silent for a long time, was activated, releasing a wave of obscure waves. Lin Sun carried his luggage on his back and stood in front of it, waiting quietly with a group of Imperial practitioners. It was time to leave. Thinking of everything he had experienced since he entered the bloodthirsty battlefield, Lin Sun couldn't help sighing with emotion. He would definitely come back to have a look in the future. Child Lin, take care. In the distance, many Imperial soldiers were seeing Lin Sun off reluctantly. Grandmaster Lin, you must come back to see us if you have a chance in the future. A group of spiritual tattooists from the Ordnance Department also came to see Lin Sun off under the leadership of Master Ing. Ha ha ha, don't worry about the lack of friends on the road ahead. Everyone in the world knows you. Bro, when I get tired of the life on the battlefield, I'll come back to have a drink with you. Lu Wenting laughed, drank a pot of liquor, and then handed it to Lin Sun. Brother Lin, you are destined to have a place on the road of struggle for the Tao in the future. I only hope that we will have a chance to meet again. Yen Feng, who was usually silent, also spoke at this moment and looked at Lin Sun seriously. Lin Sun's eyes swept across the faces of these people one by one, and his heart was warm. These people had gone through thick and thin with him and fought side by side. However, when Lin Sun finally looked at Zhang Sunlai in the distance, Zhang Sunlai waved his hand impatiently as if driving away a fly, and shouted, "Get out of here. Don't trouble me again. Since you appeared, my head has become bigger than before." Everyone burst into laughter. Lin Sun was a little embarrassed, and then he couldn't help laughing. The transmission formation had been activated, and they couldn't waste any more time. The supplies from the Empire and the newly dispatched soldiers all needed to be transmitted through this passage. Farewell, everyone. Lin Sun cupped his hands to the surroundings, and then stepped into the transmission formation with a group of practitioners who were about to return to the Empire like him. Farewell. The people in the distance cupped their hands in unison. After all, they had to say goodbye. They didn't know when they would meet again, and maybe there would be no chance to meet again in the future. This caused many practitioners to feel suffocated and flustered. It was precisely because he had seen so many deaths and parting in the bloodthirsty battlefield that he understood the meaning of parting. Even the corners of Zhang Sunlai's lips wriggled. He wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he just waved his hand fiercely without making a sound. What about a bye? When the transmission formation was running, Lin Sun still couldn't see Abi's figure in the end. He couldn't help but be a little stunned. That's true. According to her personality, she definitely wouldn't be willing to send you off. At the same time, in a stone house in the camp, Abi sat alone with her fingers intertwined together, and her chest rose and fell, seeming to be restless. Outside the window, waves of farewells resounded endlessly from afar. This caused Abi to feel even more flustered in her heart, and she struggled very much. Should she go and see him one last time? Abi bit her lips before fiercely stomping her feet and rushing out of the room like a gust of wind. However, when she rushed out of the room, the teleportation formation was already empty. That figure was nowhere to be seen. Had he already left? Abi shook all over, and a deep sense of loss welled up in her heart. Toy boy, in the future, remember not to be so nice to women anymore. They are easily moved and will remember your kindness. It's too difficult to forget you, after a long time, Abi murmured to herself, and a line of tears rolled down her face silently. On this day, the passage to the Empire was opened in the bloodthirsty battlefield. In the 8 camps of the Empire, scenes of farewell were going on. Similarly, there were also new faces and new Imperial soldiers being sent to the bloodthirsty battlefield. The new generation replaced the old. They were stationed on the front line of the Empire all year round. As long as the enemy was not dead, the conquest would not stop. Rookies, do you see? This is the military merit list. Those who can be listed on it are all famous figures in our camp. This list represents supreme glory, but all of you should understand that behind every glory is an endless amount of blood and tears. A veteran was watching the military merit list in the camp with a group of new Imperial practitioners. Who is Lin Shi? How could he rank third on the military merit list with the cultivation of Tao Insight Realm? This can't be true, can it? An exclamation rang out, attracting the attention of all the newcomers. Then, there was an uproar and some people found it hard to believe. Almost all the top 100 practitioners on the military merit list were top figures of the reincarnation developing realm. And of the top 10 practitioners on the military merit list, 9 of them were senior figures of the half-step to king realm. Only the name Lin Shi was unusual and too eye-catching, because he was the only one with the cultivation of Tao Insight Realm to rank third on the military merit list in the top 10. Looking at the shocked expressions on the faces of the rookies, the veteran sneered. These new recruits were really ignorant. Immediately, he coughed and said slowly, "Remember, don't judge Mr. Lin Shi by your standards. He is completely different from the Tao Insight Realm, you know. If you want to talk about his legendary experience, you won't be able to finish it in a day and night. I can only tell you," the veteran's voice was low, with a sense of awe and fanaticism from the bottom of his heart, and even more so, a sense of pride. The new recruits were skeptical at first, but at the end, they were completely attracted. Their hearts were racing, and the dazzling image of a young talent emerged in their minds at the same time. After a long time, the veteran changed the topic. "Well, let's stop here. You will have plenty of time to learn about Mr. Lin Shi's past in the future. Let's go, I'll take you to the ordnance department. Oh right, I forgot to tell you that Mr. Lin Shi is also a spiritual tattoo guru. Don't you find it incredible? Ha ha, how can you be so king dumbfounded? You really haven't seen the world." As he led the new recruits forward, the veteran laughed. Of course, he did not mean any harm, because when he first learned about this, he looked even worse than these new recruits. There are talents in every generation, and each of them will lead the way for hundreds of years. Lin Shi, I will definitely break your record and replace your position on the military merit list. Among the new recruits, only a skinny young man looked back at the military merit list that was getting further and further away. There was an unprecedented firmness in his eyes. The young man's name was Yi Fan, a very good name. In the legendary stories told by many storytellers in the Empire, the protagonist of many stories was called Yi Fan. On this day, the voodoo barbarian camp, like the camp of the Empire, had many new recruits. "My lord, who is this Lin Shi? Why is he ranked third on the blood list? He is just a young man at the Tao Insight Realm. Don't you overestimate him? Ridiculous. Who is this Lin Shi? How can he be valued and vigilant by our voodoo barbarian tribe?" When seeing the name on the blood list, the new recruits suddenly burst into an uproar, expressing their indignation and disdain. A strong voodoo barbarian leading the new recruits suddenly looked gloomy and uncertain. After a while, he gnashed his teeth and roared, "Shut up, all of you!" The new recruits were as silent as cicadas in winter. With a livid face, the strong voodoo barbarian pointed at the name of Lin Shi on the blood list and said word by word, "You must all remember this name. He has brought endless shame to our voodoo barbarian tribe. He is an enemy that our tribe must eradicate." The strong voodoo barbarian suddenly realized that this young man named Lin Shi must not be simple. The strong voodoo barbarian didn't explain what Lin Sun had done in the end, because it was too shameful and incredible, which would seriously affect the morale of these new recruits. In the future, you will understand the meaning of this name. Finally, the strong voodoo barbarian sighed and turned away. It was said that Lin Shi, the demon-like young man, would leave today, but the bad influence he brought to the voodoo barbarian camp was doomed to be erased for a while. In fact, it was true. Although Lin Sun only fought in the bloodthirsty battlefield for half a year, he rose like a comet and became a brilliant star in the bloodthirsty battlefield. Everything that happened to him was like a miracle, full of legendary colors. It was not easy to erase the influence that he had left behind. However, all this had nothing to do with Lin Sun today. Giant Crescent City of the Empire. As one of the affiliated cities that guarded the Forbidden City, the most elite army of the Empire was stationed in the Giant Crescent City all year round, under the direct jurisdiction and command of the Imperial Army. In the southwest area of the Giant Crescent City, there was a military camp covering an area of thousands of acres. On this day, with a violent roar, a transmission channel to the bloodthirsty battlefield was activated. Near the transmission formation, a group of Imperial generals stood solemnly. Each of them was as majestic as the sea, which added a sense of palpitating solemnity to the originally silent atmosphere. Buzz. The transmission channel was completely opened. With an obscure roar, the figures of Imperial practitioners came out of the channel one after another. All of a sudden, there was an uproar on the scene. The Imperial generals also secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The safe opening of the channel and the safe return of Imperial soldiers from the battlefield undoubtedly showed that the situation in the bloodthirsty battlefield was not bad. Lin Sun was also among them. When he walked out of the transmission formation, he looked at the blue sky above his head, the white clouds, and breathed in the thin spiritual energy in the air. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel as if he had been separated from the world for a lifetime. In the bloodthirsty battlefield, the spiritual chi was exhausted, and it was barren and lifeless. It was full of darkness, killing and danger. Now that he returned to the Empire and this familiar world, no one could not help but sigh with emotion. "I'm back." Lin Sun let out a long breath of turbid air, and a strong impulse surged in his heart. He wanted to go home, back to Heart-Cleansing Peak. Although he had left for half a year, it seemed that he had experienced a long period of time. How were his relatives and friends on Heart-Cleansing Peak during this half a year? In the distance, a familiar figure strode over. Before he arrived, he had laughed boldly. "Welcome back." Chapter 751. It was Zhao Tailai. He stepped forward with a smile and gave Lin Sun a warm hug. Then he said with a smile, "I've heard that you did a great job in the bloodthirsty battlefield. The old man of the Sleeping Stars and Moon House said that the money for the meal is almost paid." Lin Sun rolled his eyes. "I thought you were here to welcome me. I didn't expect that all you cared about was the money." Zhao Tailai laughed, put his arm around Lin Sun's shoulder, and walked away. "Let's get out of this damn place first. Otherwise, you won't be able to leave later." Lin Sun was surprised. "Why?" Zhao Tailai said casually. "You made so much noise in the bloodthirsty battlefield that some old guys in the military headquarters have their eyes on you. They want to keep you in the military headquarters." Lin Sun immediately quickened his pace. He had just come back from the battlefield and hadn't even returned home. How could he have the mood to stay in the military headquarters? Damn it, where's Lin the 12th? Where's Lin the 12th? Not long after Lin Sun and Zhao Tailai left, a rough roar rumbled through the camp. "Old Ding, what the hell are you shouting about? Even if we find Lin the 12th, he can't go with you. A good seedling like him can only stand out in our Black Dragon army." Bullsh *T. Black Dragon army is nothing. Our Blood Wolf army is the elite of the elite. Even if Lin the 12th wants to go, he must go to our Blood Wolf army. Okay, stop arguing. Our Rose army hasn't said anything. What are you arguing about? What's the point? An intense argument broke out in the entire camp. The originally solemn and dignified generals of the Empire were now in a heated argument, their faces red with anger. All the soldiers of the Empire were stunned. Today was the day to welcome the triumphant return of the soldiers from the bloodthirsty battlefield, and there was supposed to be a celebration party later. But now, the old generals in the camp were arguing over Lin the 12th? Was there something different about this guy? Soon, someone told them about Lin Sun's brilliant achievements in the bloodthirsty battlefield, which immediately made the audience feel enlightened and stirred up. No wonder those old generals were so desperate to keep Lin Shu'er here. It turned out that he was a tough guy. If Lin Sun had seen this scene, he would have secretly rejoiced that he had left with Zhao Tailai in advance. Otherwise, according to this situation, if he did not agree to stay under the command of an old general today, he would never be able to leave. Oh, by the way, who is Lin Shu'er? Why haven't I heard of him before he went to the bloodthirsty battlefield? Suddenly, an old general with a white beard asked. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. After a while, a middle-aged general with an extremely vigorous aura said, "Half a year ago, it was Zhao Tailai who sent him to the bloodthirsty battlefield. If I'm right, he is Lin Sun." Lin? Could it be? Yes, Lin Sun, the head of heart-cleansing peak. It's him. All the soldiers were shocked. Half a year ago, Lin Sun's name had already resounded over the sky of the Forbidden City and was known by the world. Yet now, he'd actually created so many dazzling and striking accomplishments in the bloodthirsty battlefield, and this seemed to be too shocking. Child Lin is peerless in the world and crowns all over the capital. Hey, I didn't take this praise seriously before, but now I have to say that the younger generation will surpass us in time. The white-haired old general sighed with emotion, which aroused a burst of resonance among the people present. Yes, Lin Sun was only famous in the Forbidden City in the past, which belonged to the territory of the Empire. But now, he had spread his prestige far and wide in the bloodthirsty battlefield, which made voodoo barbarians tremble. Originally, I was going to have a drink with you, but now there's an important thing to tell you. On the way back to the Forbidden City after leaving the gigantic Crescent City, Zhao Tailai sighed with a rare gloominess on his face. What's the matter? Lin Sun asked. At this moment, the two of them were sitting on a treasured ship that was flying beneath the sky. Just a few days ago, an elder of the heaven-reaching sword sect in the ancient Desolation territory came to the Empire with a group of descendants. Lin Sun's eyes suddenly narrowed when he heard this. Heaven-reaching sword sect. He was too familiar with this name, because Yun Qinbai, the enemy who killed the lineal descendants of Lin family, came from heaven-reaching sword sect. It could be said that the most important reason why Lin Sun insisted on going to the ancient Desolation territory was to avenge his parents and relatives, and the enemy was Yun Qinbai. What are they doing here? Lin Sun asked after a moment of silence. On the surface, their purpose is very simple. They are here for the demoted ninth prince. They want to take the ninth prince to the ancient Desolation territory for cultivation. Zhao Tailai explained patiently. You also know that the grandfather of the ninth prince is a powerful elder in heaven-reaching sword sect. After hearing what happened to the ninth prince, they naturally won't sit back and do nothing. Lin Sun nodded. He knew the cause and effect. More than 10 years ago, it was because the ninth prince Zhao Jingzhen and his mother Meng Rong leaked the news that Yun Qinbai, the future leader of heaven-reaching sword sect, knew that Lin Sun was born with the talent of devouring abyss. Then, in order to pursue the so-called perfect way, Yun Qinbai came to the empire alone and killed the Lin family. He killed all the lineal members of the Lin family overnight and dug out a part of the spiritual vein in Lin Sun's body, who was still a baby. Later, this matter caused the fury of the emperor, who abolished Meng Rong's imperial concubine position. However, due to the power of heaven-reaching sword sect, the emperor could only do so much. Meng Rong was finally taken away by her father, the elder of heaven-reaching sword sect, and left the empire. As for the ninth prince Zhao Jingzhen, he was also neglected by the emperor. Some time ago, because of a grudge related to Lin Sun, the ninth prince was directly demoted and sent to the depths of the imperial palace to guard the tomb of the ancestors of the royal family. He was forbidden to go out for the rest of his life. However, Lin Sun didn't expect that heaven-reaching sword sect would send people to take away the ninth prince, who was demoted and imprisoned. Obviously, it must be the grandfather of the ninth prince who was behind this. Lin Sun thought for a while and asked, since this is their purpose on the surface, what do they want to do behind the scenes? Zhao Tailai glanced at him and said, it should be related to you. Yun Qingbai already knows that I am still alive? Lin Sun was shocked. Zhao Tailai nodded, but this is the Empire. Even if Yun Qingbai comes, he won't dare to act recklessly. What's more, Yun Qingbai didn't come this time, so you don't have to worry about anything. Lin Sun was silent. Yun Qingbai, a famous first sword practitioner in the ancient Desolation territory, was known as invincible under the king. It was said that he was wise, talented, decisive, and unscrupulous. He had never been defeated since he started his cultivation. Above his head, there were many eye-catching halos. He was like a god's favored one, feared and admired by countless practitioners in the ancient Desolation territory. In the face of such an enemy, Lin Sun wanted to kill him immediately, but the reality was cruel after all. He was very sure that if he faced Yun Qingbai now, he would only have a small chance to kill him even with the help of insignificant bow and blue sky arrow. What was invincible under the king? Yun Qingbai didn't even put the half-step king in his eyes. Based on this, Lin Sun knew how powerful Yun Qingbai was. What's more, Lin Sun was worried that the information he knew was outdated. Yun Qingbai might have become stronger than before. Didn't Yun Qingbai come? Right, he seized my quintessence spirit vein over 10 years ago, and perhaps he's already stepped onto the perfect grand Tao that he pursues. So he naturally wouldn't care about how great of a storm I, a fellow that was only an infant in his eyes all those years ago, could cause. Lin Sun's expression was neither sad nor happy, and his voice was calm, or, even if he knows my existence, I'm afraid he doesn't care about it at all. But Zhao Tailai noticed that Lin Sun's state of mind at the moment was very wrong. He couldn't help saying, there is no priority in the fight for the Great Way. With your current ability, you don't need to belittle yourself. Lin Sun shook his head, don't worry. I'm just stating a fact. Isn't it better? I hope he ignores my existence. In this case, when I go to him for revenge one day, I'll make him die more miserably. After returning to the Forbidden City, you stay on Heart-Cleansing Peak for a period of time. It's not too late to make other preparations after I find out what those people from Heaven-Reaching Sword sect want to do. Zhao Tailai solemnly exhorted. Okay. Lin Sun agreed. In the evening, before Lin Sun returned to Heart-Cleansing Peak, he became more determined than ever when he looked at the familiar mountain gate. For the sake of Lin family today, as long as he was alive, he would never allow what had happened that year to happen again in the future. In the Heart-Cleansing Hall at the top of Heart-Cleansing Peak, as usual, Vulture summoned all the big shots of Lin family to discuss and arrange various affairs of the clan. Lin Zhong, Yang Ku, Lin Huiyuan, Zhu Laosan and others were all there. Outside the Great Hall, the Scarlet Eagle King puffed out his chest and stood proudly on the eaves of the Great Hall. His fiery red feathers were like burning divine flames, making him look extraordinarily handsome. Chirp! Suddenly, a round fat ball popped out from Young Ku's arms. It had round eyes, a round nose, and round ears. Its body was also very soft and round. It was very cute. It was Chirp. What's the matter, Chirp? Are you hungry? Young Ku was stunned. She thought that the little fellow was hungry. Chirp! The little fellow seemed to notice something. Its round body broke away from Young Ku's arms. It seemed to be very excited. It made a clear and urgent chirp from its mouth. Then it turned into a line of fire and rushed out of the hall. All the people who were discussing things were stunned. Chirp used to be very obedient. It was never as excited and abnormal as it was now. Everyone couldn't help looking out of the hall. Almost at the same time, Red Eagle King shouted with surprise outside the hall, Master, Master is back! Chapter 752. The head of the family was back. On Heart-Cleansing Peak, a group of big shots of Lin family were summoned and gathered in the hall of Heart-Cleansing Peak. Even old people such as Lin Sisi, Lin Yunheng and Lin Baiguang also came. Outside the hall, all the disciples of the Lin clan's branch family were like a dense black tide, and all of them stood solemnly and waited silently. Even further away, servants were like clouds and attendants like a forest, carefully serving them. It could be said that when Lin Sun came back, everyone on Heart Cleansing Peak stopped what they were doing and came to see him. This kind of change was undoubtedly enough to prove that Lin Sun's status on Heart Cleansing Peak was really different from before. In other words, this was the power of the head of the family. At this time, in the hall of Heart Cleansing Peak, the atmosphere was also solemn. Vulture, Young Ku, Lin Zhong, Lin Huiyuan, Zhu Laosan and other core figures were present in turn. At the same time, the important figures of the Lin family's collateral relatives also sat upright and still, not daring to show the slightest bit of neglect. Sitting in the central seat of honor, Lin Sun looked at the familiar faces in the hall, the disciples of Lin family outside the hall, as well as the well-trained servants and servants. Suddenly, he felt unprecedentedly calm and fulfilled. Since he entered the Forbidden City, didn't all his efforts just for what he saw in front of him? Now, Lin family finally stood in the Forbidden City again and rose with a strong posture. Its rising momentum was unstoppable. As Lin Sun's mood fluctuated, all the people in the hall were also looking at Lin Sun, who had disappeared for half a year. His body is stained with iron and blood, and his bearing is more and more stable. Compared with the past, he is undoubtedly a different person. Vulture sighed with emotion in his heart. He almost watched how Lin Sun achieved such achievements step by step in the Forbidden City. This boy has become more and more unfathomable. A strange color flashed in Young Ku's clear eyes. When he was in the bloodthirsty camp, Lin Sun was only a thin boy of 13 or 14 years old. Now Lin Sun was already a famous overmatch in the world. His bearing was as vast as mountains and seas, and his mind was as broad as the sun and the moon. Even some powerful figures in the Forbidden City were inferior to Lin Sun in terms of demeanor. I can't see through him at all. Zhu Laosan was a little shocked under his reticent appearance. At that time, Lin Sun still needed his protection and care. But now, even he couldn't see through Lin Sun's strength. This undoubtedly meant that Lin Sun's strength had probably surpassed his. Lin Huiyuan had been very nervous, his whole body tensed up. When he faced Lin Sun half a year ago, he didn't have such a strong feeling. But now, Lin Sun just sat casually and made him feel an unspeakable pressure, like a subject facing a superior who controlled the universe. It was not just Lin Huiyuan. Even Lin Sisi, Lin Yunheng, Lin Beiguang, and the other reincarnation developing realm powerhouses of the older generation were very reserved. From Lin Sun, they felt a kind of extremely terrible bloody murderous spirit, which made them shudder with fear. This shocked them and made them a little dazed. It had only been half a year, and this little fellow's strength had become even more terrifying. He was only at the heavenly abode realm, yet he made these old fellows feel fearful and uncomfortable. This was undoubtedly too shocking. Lin Sun didn't deliberately show his power. This was a kind of temperament that he had honed through the killing in the bloodthirsty battlefield. At this moment, he wore moon-white clothes, had pitch-black long hair that hung down on his shoulders, a pair of eyes that were deep like an abyss, and his handsome and angular face was covered in a calm and indifferent expression. As he sat there casually, he emanated an otherworldly aura. But as long as one sensed carefully, it was not difficult to find that his chi was smooth and smooth, surging with an invisible iron-blooded murderous spirit, which gave him a kind of awe-inspiring majesty. This time, it won't be long before I leave for the ancient Desolation territory. First, it's to avenge the relatives and friends of our Lin family who were killed. Second, it's to seek my own path. In the solemn and silent atmosphere, Lin Sun opened his mouth. His voice was calm and clear, echoing in the hall. The hearts of everyone shook because this was a decision that they'd never expected. Before I leave, I hope to select a clansman with both ability and integrity from our Lin family to take charge of the Lin family on my behalf. This matter will be handled by Mr. Vulture and Grandad Zhong. If you have any objection to this decision, you may speak out. Lin Sun glanced at all the people in the hall when he said this. After a long time, there was still silence in the hall. No one showed any sign of opposition. Seeing this, Lin Sun directly made a decision. That's settled. When it comes to influence, our Lin family is not inferior to the middle-level forces now? After the clan meeting, Lin Sun was a little surprised when he was asked about the situation of Lin family in Heart Cleansing Peak in the past 6 months. According to Lin Zhong, in the past 6 months, the rise of Lin family could be described as smooth and steady. Not only the industry owned by Lin family had more than doubled, but also they had further close cooperation with Keystone Business, Ning family, Gong family and Yi family. In addition, the commune of spiritual tattooists, the spiritual tattoo branch of Green Deer School, and the Academy of Spiritual Implements of the Empire also had frequent contacts with Lin family and carried out many cooperation. Most importantly, almost everyone in the Forbidden City knew that Lin family of Heart Cleansing Peak was favored by the current emperor. Even the current emperor once wrote a calligraphy scroll of "Young Phoenix is more pure than old Phoenix," and gave it to Lin Sun. This was an honor that was hard to come by. Under such circumstances, it was hard for Lin family not to rise. Ho-ho, in terms of foundation, we may still be a little worse than the middle-level forces. But in terms of influence, no middle-level forces in the whole Forbidden City can compare with Lin family. Lin Zhong said proudly. Seeing this, Lin Sun also felt relaxed and thought that Zhao Tailai, the old fox, was reassuring. At least what he had promised Lin Sun had been done. Lin Sun's trip to the bloodthirsty battlefield was worthwhile. While chatting, Lin Zhong suddenly said one thing. By the way, a young man named Gu Liang came to visit you a few days ago. He said that he was your old friend, young master. Gu Liang? Lin Sun immediately remembered that the only friend he made when he was still in Donglin town was Gu Liang. Gu Liang's father, Gu Yanping, was the shopkeeper of Golden Hall. He was shrewd and wise and gave Lin Sun a lot of care at that time. Gu Liang was also good. He inherited his father's business and had a calm and alert temperament. He could be called a good friend of Lin Sun. Lin Zhong said to himself, "Young master, I've inquired about him. Gu Liang is the young shopkeeper of Golden Hall. Speaking of it, Golden Hall is just a chamber of commerce in the southwestern province of the Empire. It was only a few days ago that it expanded its power to the Forbidden City." Lin Sun asked, "Grandad Zhong, where is Gu Liang now?" Golden Hall recently opened a chamber of commerce in the eastern district of the Forbidden City. If I'm not mistaken, child Gu Liang must be there. Lin Zhong instantly judged that Gu Liang should not lie when he claimed to be an old friend of his young master. According to my understanding of him, if he came to see me, he would first confirm whether I was still on Heart Cleansing Peak or not. But he came directly a few days ago. There is something wrong with this matter. He must have encountered some tricky trouble. Lin Sun stood up and said, "Grandad Zhong, arrange it. I'm going to see Gu Liang." The eastern district of the Forbidden City. This place was extremely prosperous. Major businesses stood in it, attracting practitioners from all over the empire every day. More than 10 days ago, a new business named Golden Hall opened in this bustling area. However, it was strange that from the first day of Golden Hall's opening, there were constant troubles. Every day, a group of practitioners would block the door and prevent other guests from entering. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that they were making trouble. Today was no exception. It was noon, the busiest time of the day. Bustling pedestrians shuttled through this area. There was a lot of traffic and people were sweating like rain. However, in front of the gate of Golden Hall, there was a human wall. It was a group of extremely capable practitioners. They blocked the gate and did not allow outsiders to approach. In the hall of Golden Hall, there was a duck's voice like a broken gong. "Little bastard, how many days have passed? Why didn't Lin family of Heart Cleansing Peak come out to help you? You're obviously using the name of Lin family to scare people." It was a middle-aged man with a handlebar mustache in a brocade robe. His saliva was flying and his fingers almost poked Gu Liang's face. He was extremely arrogant. "Bah! You're just like your father. You're ignorant and full of lies. Do you want to open Golden Hall in the Forbidden City? Wishful thinking." The middle-aged man with a handlebar mustache looked contemptuous and disdainful. "You don't know the master of Lin family. Even if you know him, you can't change your situation. Remember, you and your father are the shame of Gu family. You're the abandoned pawns, expelled from the Forbidden City. As long as Gu family is in the Forbidden City, you can't come back." On the opposite side, Gu Liang's face was ugly. His fingers were clenched tightly in his palm. There was a burst of anger and hatred in his chest. The middle-aged man with a handlebar mustache was called Gu Yong. According to the seniority, he was Gu Liang's third uncle. But Gu Liang knew that this third uncle didn't regard him as a relative at all. Even when he learned that Gu Liang returned to the Forbidden City, he intended to kill all of them. "What do you want?" Gu Liang suppressed his inner anger and said, "What do I want? This question is really naive." Gu Yong sneered, "But since you want to know, I'll tell you now." Speaking of this, he waved his hand and said heroically, "Come on, smash this bullshit Golden Hall for me. Kill anyone who dares to stop me." Chapter 753. Bang, bang, bang. In the main hall of Golden Hall, there was a burst of breaking sound. The clansmen of Gu family had already started to smash all the most precious items in the hall. "How dare you!" Gu Liang was completely furious. He rushed forward to stop them with his eyes wide open. "If you dare to do it, there will be a river of blood here." Gu Yong's eyes were gloomy. He inadvertently glanced at the distance, where a group of servants and waiters of Golden Hall were standing and shivering with fear. You've gone too far." Gu Liang was trembling with anger and his eyes were red. Those servants and waiters were innocent. If they were implicated because of him, he would feel guilty. The more he acted like this, the more complacent Gu Yong was. He laughed and said, "Is there anything we dare not do to deal with you, little bastard?" Those people of Gu family who were smashing Golden Hall also burst into laughter. Gu Liang was so angry that he said with a livid face, "I said that Golden Hall is not just mine and my father's. Don't you worry that the head of Lin family will punish you for doing this? At that time, I'm afraid that your Gu family can't bear it together." Gu Yong's face suddenly darkened and he said coldly, "How dare you threaten us with Lin family at such a time? If the head of Lin family has something to do with Golden Hall, why have you been indifferent to it these days?" Gu Liang was speechless, but his face became more and more gloomy. Seeing that his newly opened shop was smashed like this, he felt a stabbing pain in his heart and was about to bleed. "Just give up," Gu Yong said disdainfully. "If the head of Lin family comes in person today, I can even kneel and kowtow to him. But obviously it's impossible. Now in the Forbidden City, everyone knows that the head of Lin family is a peerless talent with a great reputation. Even the top forces dare not provoke him. How could such a dazzling figure have anything to do with your bullshit Golden Hall?" A few days ago, he also led a group of clansmen to smash Golden Hall, but he was frightened by the relationship between Gu Liang and the head of Lin family. Finally, he left in a panic. But soon he noticed that the Lin family did not respond at all to the encounter of Golden Hall. Thus, Gu Yong instantly turned furious from embarrassment. He felt that he'd been tricked, so he led his clansmen to make a comeback. At first, he was also a little worried, so when he targeted Golden Hall, he did not dare to go too far. But after many days of probing, he found that Lin family of Heart Cleansing Peak still didn't move at all, which made Gu Yong finally confirm that he was fooled by Gu Liang. This little bastard was trying to scare him with his tiger skin. Feeling ashamed and angry, Gu Yong came here with a murderous look. He decided not to hold back anymore. He would completely destroy Golden Hall and let Gu Liang, the little bastard, get out of the Forbidden City. It was precisely because of these thoughts that Gu Yong dared to speak with such confidence. At this moment, he was even very proud of himself for seeing through Gu Liang's lies and exposing this kid's sinister intentions. You'll regret this. Gu Liang looked stupefied. In his field of vision, the originally beautiful Golden Hall was now a scene of devastation. It was in a mess and destroyed beyond recognition, which made his heart twitch. Regret? Gu Yong laughed. I, Gu Yong, have never regretted doing things. Flop. Flop. At this moment, the practitioners of the Gu family who formed a human wall at the entrance of Golden Hall flew up like broken kites, as if they had been hit by a primeval bull. They fell hard in the hall and rolled in a large area. Screams and wails followed. How dare you? Who the hell dares to obstruct my Gu family? Gu Yong's smile suddenly froze, and then he roared angrily. You said that as long as I come, you will kneel and kowtow. Now you not only don't kneel, but also dare to speak rudely to me. How dare you? With a flat voice, a handsome young man walked into the hall of Golden Hall accompanied by an old man. Who are you? Gu Yong's pupils shrank and he looked a little surprised. Those practitioners of Gu family who were smashing Golden Hall had long been shocked by the movement just now. At this moment, they all stopped what they were doing and looked over. Kneel first and then talk to me. The young man was naturally Lin Sun. He glanced at Gu Yong and didn't pay attention to him anymore. Instead, he looked at Gu Liang. I'm late. Lin Sun was a little apologetic. Gu Liang shook his head and revealed a heartfelt smile. You're not late. At least in the Forbidden City we finally meet again. You are. At this moment, Gu Yong's eyes suddenly widened as if he had guessed something. He was completely dumbfounded as if he had seen a ghost. Flop. At this time, Lin Zhong stepped forward and patted Gu Yong lightly with his palm. Gu Yong knelt down with a flop, and the bones in his knees were broken in an instant. The pain made his cheeks twist and he gasped. He dared not cry out because he was really scared. His forehead was dripping with cold sweat, and he looked like he had been frightened. If his guess was right, then the identity of the young man in front of him would be obvious. However, Gu Yong couldn't figure out how such a peerless figure, who was famous throughout the empire and was said to be crowned all over the capital, could have a connection with the unknown Golden Hall. It felt as if a divine dragon in the heavens had formed a connection with an ant on the ground. It was truly inconceivable. Didn't you hear my young master's words? Kneel and talk. Lin Zhong warned and stood beside Lin Sun with his hands folded in front of him. Next to them, those practitioners of Gu family were also stunned. An old man and a young man suddenly arrived and easily broke through the human wall that blocked the entrance of the hall. After that, they walked into the hall in a composed manner as if they were taking a leisurely stroll in the courtyard. That invisible imposing manner caused them to be awed, especially when they saw Gu Yong, a strong practitioner of Tao Insight Realm, kneeling on the ground with a casual slap. Those practitioners of Gu family felt their hearts tremble and their faces change dramatically. This time, it seemed that they had really kicked an iron plate. Outside the Golden Hall, many practitioners, including some powerful figures, had already gathered to watch the fun. When they saw the practitioners of the Gu family, who had been arrogant and brazenly smashing other people's shops a moment ago, were now crushed and intimidated like chickens and dogs, these onlookers couldn't help but be secretly shocked. Who was so bold to intervene in the action of Gu family? Although Gu family was not as prominent as the 7 top aristocratic families, it was still one of the middle-level aristocratic families in the empire. In the past, they had never been treated like this. Immediately, a sharp-eyed practitioner recognized something and couldn't help crying out, "God, it's Lin Sun." After half a year, he shows up again. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Suddenly, there was an uproar outside Golden Hall. Finally, they realized that no wonder the young man dared to treat the people of Gu family like this. It turned out that the fierce and famous young man had come. This time, Gu family really kicked an iron plate. Many practitioners couldn't help but gloat. Some practitioners who admired Lin Sun couldn't help volunteering for the mission. "Child Lin, do you need our help? These members of the Gu clan have gone too far. They've actually done such a vile thing in public, and it's simply infuriating. Young Master Lin, we're willing to lend you a hand and eliminate these utterly heartless villains." Hearing the noise outside the hall, Gu Yong, who was kneeling on the ground, almost fainted. How could he expect that he would fall on a lie in the end? He had been so cautious. No. This was not a fucking lie at all. At the thought of this, Gu Yong wanted to slap himself. How could he really provoke the head of Lin family of Heart-Cleansing Peak? When he thought of some of the ferocious deeds this fierce man had done in the Forbidden City in the past, Gu Yong wanted to die. He couldn't find any words to describe his mood at the moment. Fear? Regret? Maybe all of them. In a word, Gu Yong's face was very gloomy at this moment, as if he had lost his parents. I remember that the last time we met in Mist City, it was almost the same scene. Why did such a thing happen in the Forbidden City? Lin Sun ignored others and just looked at Gu Liang. It's a long story. Gu Liang sighed. These matters are actually related to some grudges between my father and the Gu clan, and they're all old matters. I originally thought that my father and I had already exercised enough forbearance and compromise, but I never imagined that even now, the Gu clan still doesn't intend to let it go. The two of them chatted casually on the side, ignoring everyone else present. But the more they behaved like this, the more frightened and uneasy Gu Yong and those clansmen of Gu family became. The feeling of being out of control and waiting to be punished almost made them collapse. Outside the hall of Golden Hall, more and more people gathered. They were all practitioners who heard that Lin Sun appeared here and came to watch the fun. Lin Sun had been silent for half a year and hadn't shown up. The movement of such a peerless talent had attracted a lot of attention. Now, he appeared in an unknown business, which could be imagined how great the sensation was. "I'm Gu Tianzhong. I'm here to ask for forgiveness with a group of clansmen." Not long after, an old voice sounded outside the Golden Hall. The crowd outside Golden Hall to watch the fun was separated, and an old man came in a hurry with a group of men and women. Finally, he stopped outside Golden Hall and bowed in unison. This scene immediately shocked many practitioners because they recognized that the old man, Gu Tianzhong, was the current patriarch of Gu family. This was the ruler of a medium-sized aristocratic force. In the eyes of ordinary practitioners, he was absolutely a big shot with great power. Similarly, the group of men and women beside Gu Tianzhong were also the real power figures of Gu family. There were elders, deacons, and there were many famous figures. Chapter 754. Outside Golden Hall, it was dead silent. Although there were many onlookers, when they saw Gu Tianzhong, such a powerful figure, came with a group of senior members of Gu family and put on a humble posture to ask for forgiveness, who wouldn't be shocked. In the past, there were countless rumors about Lin Sun in the Forbidden City, and his legendary deeds were known to all. But these were rumors after all. When they saw this scene, those practitioners present finally fully realized how powerful Lin Sun was. A leader of a middle-level aristocratic force came to apologize in person, which invisibly reflected how amazing Lin Sun's power was in the Forbidden City now. In Golden Hall, Gu Yong, who knelt on the ground, completely collapsed. Even the patriarch came to apologize in person, which made him realize that he really made a big trouble this time. Even if he could escape today, he was doomed to have no place in Gu family in the future. Thinking of this, Gu Yong almost cried. How could he know that he would provoke the master of Heart-Cleansing Peak, who was the most powerful figure in the Forbidden City, just to deal with an abandoned son of the clan. Those people of Gu family who came with Gu Yong were also anxious at the moment, as if they were mourning the death of their parents. Just now, they were swaggering and smashing Golden Hall wantonly in an arrogant and unscrupulous manner. But now they were completely withered like frosted eggplant. Here comes the leader. What are you going to do with him? Lin Sun casually glanced at Gu Tianzhong and others outside the hall, and then looked at Gu Liang. At this moment, Gu Liang was slightly stunned as well. He was similarly slightly shocked. From the beginning until the end, Lin Sun hadn't said anything at all, nor had he done anything. But now, Gu Tianzhong had led the higher-ups of the Gu family to personally pay a visit and apologize. It was a little difficult for Gu Liang to adapt to it. After a while, he finally realized that Lin Sun was completely different from the Lin Sun he knew. Gu Liang wanted to say something, but he saw that Gu Tianzhong and other senior figures outside the hall all looked at him with a hint of anxiety and pleading in their eyes. This made Gu Liang a little absent-minded for a while. In the final analysis, he was also a member of Gu family, but he was expelled from the clan in those years. In the past, even though Gu Tianzhong and his clansmen had caused Gu Liang to hate them to the core, he had no choice but to admit that they were too powerful. But now, when he saw these big shots looking at him with pleading expressions, Gu Liang found this comedic change hard to believe. Lin Sun saw Gu Liang's hesitation and said, "If there is any hatred that can't be resolved, let me help you deal with it." When they heard these words, the hearts of Gu Tianzhong and the others outside the hall constricted abruptly, and their expressions went grim. If they allowed this incomparably ferocious young devil god Lin Sun to make a move, then even if their Gu clan gave it their all, they would probably be unable to gain the slightest advantage. Fortunately, Gu Liang interrupted Lin Sun before he finished. "Let me handle it." A single sentence caused Gu Tianzhong and the others to instantly feel relaxed. They felt as if they had been freed, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun's gaze looked towards them. Even though his expression was calm, it caused the hearts of Gu Tianzhong and the others to tremble, and they lowered their heads successively and actually didn't dare meet Lin Sun's gaze. "I have a share in Golden Hall, but now it has been smashed beyond recognition by your people. I hope you can come up with a satisfactory explanation," Lin Sun said casually. Gu Tianzhong, sweating profusely, hurriedly said, "Please rest assured, child Lin. Our Gu clan will compensate you tenfold and hundredfold, and severely punish the perpetrators." After that, he couldn't help but feel a surge of anger in his heart. He just wanted to slap Gu Yong and the others to death now. Why did they provoke Lin Sun, the little devil? Didn't they know that the two top forces of the Zhou clan and the Qin clan were defeated by this little devil, and had to admit defeat in the end? Not to mention these, just based on the Emperor's favor to this little devil, who would be tired of living and provoke this kid in the Forbidden City. But it happened, these bastards didn't have eyes. At the thought of this, Gu Tianzhong even had the intention to kill. Seeing this, Lin Sun knew that Gu Liang must have no intention of gathering and chatting, so he immediately said goodbye and said, "When you deal with these things, come to Heart Cleansing Peak to find me. Let's have a good drink together." "Okay." Gu Liang happily agreed. Lin Sun didn't delay any longer and immediately left with Lin Zhong. From beginning to end, he didn't look at Gu Tianzhong and others. Outside the Golden Hall, a crowd of onlookers rushed forward to greet Lin Sun warmly when they saw him coming out. "Child Lin, we have admired you for a long time. I wonder if we can have a drink together? Grand Master Lin, I'm a spiritual tattooist from Southwest Province. Do you still accept disciples?" The eyes of these practitioners were hot and eager, and their faces were full of admiration. They crowded around Lin Sun's way, which was a spectacular scene. "Child Lin, I heard that you haven't got married yet?" Even some young girls summoned up their courage to come forward, took out the jade pendant they carried with them affectionately, and wanted to give it to Lin Sun with a blushing face. Lin Sun was a little overwhelmed at once. Fortunately, Lin Zhong was there to protect him. Then he squeezed out of the enthusiastic crowd. When Gu Tianzhong and others saw this scene, they couldn't help sighing in their hearts. Child Lin was unparalleled in the world and was crowned all over the capital. Looking at this scene, they knew that this title was really not boasted. When Gu Tianzhong inadvertently glanced at Gu Liang in the distance, he suddenly thought of something. If I can make good use of today's event, maybe I can turn misfortune into fortune and build a relationship with Lin family. At the thought of this, Gu Tianzhong took a deep breath, put on a kind smile, walked into Golden Hall and sighed, "Gu Liang, our Gu family has treated you and your father badly these years. Alas, as an elder, I'm really ashamed." Lin Sun didn't intend to intervene in the internal grievances between Gu Liang and Gu family. He believed that since Gu family knew the relationship between him and Gu Liang, they would never dare to have any thoughts against Gu Liang. However, when Lin Sun got on the chariot and was about to return to Heart-Cleansing Peak, he saw a handsome young man standing in front of his chariot. "Are you Lin Sun?" The handsome young man was dressed in a plain robe with long hair coiled in a bun. He looked very young, in his teens, with a spirit of spirituality. But there was a looming arrogance in his eyes, and he even called Lin Sun's name directly. "Whose family is this little guy? How can you talk like that? Get out of the way. Don't block child Lin's way." Some practitioners next to him were very dissatisfied and scolded him one after another, thinking that the young man was too rude. The handsome young man stood there, not moving at all. His lips curled into a smile. He didn't move at all and ignored all the scolding. "Yes." Lin Sun nodded. He was keenly aware that the breath of this handsome young man was very unusual, with a unique charm. "My name is Chen Feng. I come from heaven-reaching sword sect. My master is Qing Zhe, an inherited disciple of the inner core." The handsome youth introduced himself. It was obvious that he was just a servant, but his expression was very calm. There was a restrained conceit about him, and he seemed to be full of confidence. Heaven-reaching sword sect. Lin Sun's heart skipped a beat, but he said, "Oh, why are you looking for me?" At the same time, the practitioners nearby were also surprised and realized that something was wrong. Some of the older practitioners even changed their expressions, because they all knew that the heaven-reaching sword sect was an extremely ancient orthodoxy in the ancient Desolation region. It was so rich that it could look down on the entire cultivation world of the empire. "I am following my master's order to challenge you." Chen Feng took out a sealed golden letter and passed it to Lin Sun with a flick of his finger. This action was not polite at all. As long as one was not stupid, one could feel that there was a hidden arrogance in Chen Feng. Even though he was just a servant, he did not take Lin Sun seriously. This made many practitioners present feel uncomfortable, and they frowned. Lin Sun was now a peerless talent who was famous all over the world, and he had many brilliant achievements, but now he was looked down upon by a servant. This attitude seemed to be very problematic. However, Lin Sun smiled disapprovingly and said, "Go back and tell your master that I am very busy and have no time to play this boring game with him." As he spoke, the sealed letter suddenly flashed and flew back, falling lightly under Chen Feng's feet. And Lin Sun had already boarded the carriage. "Lin Sun, don't you say that you are the best in the capital? Why don't you dare to accept my master's challenge?" Chen Feng was not enraged. He only looked at the carriage with a hint of disdain in his voice. "Let's go." Lin Sun did not bother to pay attention to this person and ordered Lin Zhong to drive the carriage away. "Little guy, if you dare to stand in my way, I don't mind killing you." Lin Zhong glanced at Chen Feng coldly. As he spoke, the carriage started and went into the distance. Chen Feng wanted to stop him, but when he saw Lin Zhong's determined and cold eyes, he suddenly narrowed his eyes and stopped. "Lin Sun, I forgot to tell you that you have to accept this challenge even if you don't want to." Just wait and see. No one can refuse my master's decision, Chen Feng said loudly and clearly. His voice was so loud that all the practitioners nearby could hear it clearly. They all realized that something was wrong. It was just a challenge which could be refused. But now, according to Chen Feng's words, his master was determined to fight with Lin Sun. An inherited disciple from the heaven-reaching sword sect in the ancient Desolation territory insisted on doing so. It was obvious that he came with bad intentions. On that day, the Forbidden City was in an uproar. The news that Lin Sun appeared in Golden Hall after half a year of silence was spread. At the same time, the news that Qing Zhe, a disciple of the heaven-reaching sword sect, issued a letter of challenge to Lin Sun also spread like wildfire, causing a great disturbance. All the major forces were alarmed and began to pay attention to it. No one expected that after disappearing for half a year, Lin Sun would cause such a big movement as soon as he showed up. The successor of the heaven-reaching sword sect actually wanted to challenge Lin Sun. This was absolutely a big event. Many forces began to take action and began to inquire about Qing Zhe. They were shocked when they heard the news. The origin and strength of Qing Zhe were completely beyond everyone's expectation. Chapter 755. Qing Zhe. He was a core disciple of the Heavenly Sword sect, at the early stage of the reincarnation developing realm. He was a direct descendant of the Green Crane bloodline of the ancient Desolation realm. He was one of the most outstanding rising stars of the Heavenly Sword sect, possessing the first-grade innate attribute, Absolute Azure Battle Chi. A few days ago, Qing Zhe had come to Xiao Empire with Elder Gu Dongting of the Heavenly Sword sect and received a grand reception from the imperial family. At that banquet, a sensational event had taken place. At that time, an important figure of the imperial family called Zhao Guangxiu had proposed a toast to Qing Zhe, but he had flatly refused, saying, "You can propose a toast to me, but you are not qualified." His words had changed the atmosphere of the scene. This was especially true for Zhao Guangxiu. She couldn't find a way out of this embarrassing situation. He was a marquis of the imperial family. Not only had he proposed a toast to Qing Zhe, but Qing Zhe had also rudely said that he was not qualified to propose a toast to him. This was an obvious insult. Then how about I propose a toast to you? There were some people who couldn't bear to watch this, stepping forward bravely and coldly speaking. This was a king of virtue and prestige, someone who had a great reputation. But to everyone's surprise, Qing Zhe refused again without even batting an eyelid. "You are not qualified either." The atmosphere suddenly became deathly silent and oppressive. Those present were all famous and influential figures of the empire, and there was no lack of outstanding figures. But at this moment, they were all infuriated by Qing Zhe's arrogant and rude attitude. "Then who do you think is qualified to propose a toast to you?" An important figure asked coldly. Qing Zhe had been very calm from beginning to end. He drank by himself and said indifferently, "Whoever can take 3 of my swords is qualified to propose a toast to me." Only now did all the great figures present realize that the reason Qing Zhe was so arrogant and rude was because he thought too highly of himself. He felt that it was impossible for a marquis and a king that had just toasted him to be able to withstand the might of 3 of his sword strikes in a contest of strength. This was too arrogant. The important figures present were not only of high status and noble identity, but they were also influential figures whose cultivation was almost no weaker than the reincarnation developing realm. However, this Qing Zhe dared to say such arrogant words in such a situation. Naturally, this made everyone feel very uncomfortable. If not for the fact that the other party was from the Heavenly Sword sect, they would have long since chased this arrogant brat away. In the end, Major General Yu Wenzhong of the Southern Fire Army couldn't hold it in anymore. He stood up and wanted to toast Qing Zhe with his strength and teach him a lesson. Yu Wenzhong was a top cultivator at the reincarnation development realm. He fought and killed all year round and had rich battle experience. But under the astonished gazes of the crowd, he was defeated by Xianzhe's sword. Or it could be said that Yuanzhong didn't even manage to block a single sword strike before he was shaken to the point his body staggered back over a dozen steps. In the end, he couldn't help but cough up blood on the spot. On the other hand, from the beginning until the end, Qingzhe still sat upright before the table while holding a cup of wine in his hand, and not a single drop of wine had spilled out when he swung his sword. His calm and composed attitude caused all the great figures present to be shocked. This first sword strike of mine is called daybreak. It's like the sun that has just risen, and everywhere its light covers, the darkness will collapse into nothingness. Unfortunately, you weren't even able to resist my first sword strike, so what qualifications do you have to drink with me? Qingzhe sighed lightly on the spot, and he seemed to be slightly dispirited. These words were simply like teaching a lesson to a junior, and his attitude caused the expressions of all the great figures of the empire to become even more unsightly. On the other hand, Yuanzhong was even more humiliated and furious, and he was provoked to the point of flicking his sleeve and leaving on the spot. Haha, what an arrogant student! In next to no time, another great figure stood out. This was a marquis of the imperial family, and he possessed a cultivation at the perfection stage of the reincarnation development realm. When he was young, he'd once slaughtered a real flood dragon, and he was absolutely a ruthless figure with extraordinary combat strength. But in the end, even though he'd blocked Qingzhe's sword strike, he'd suffered a heavy injury because of it. When Qingzhe slashed out a second time, he retreated in the end and didn't dare bear the brunt of the attack. This caused everyone present to be astounded. A great cultivator at the perfection stage of the reincarnation development realm of the older generation was merely able to block a single sword strike from Qingzhe? This seemed to be too shocking, because everyone was able to discern that Qingzhe was merely at the initial stage of the reincarnation development realm, and he was at most a little over 20 years of age. Could it be that this was the ability of an inner sect disciple of the Heavenly Sword sect? Qingzhe said indifferently, "My second sword strike is called Remnant Frost. Once it's executed, all living things wither and all life is destroyed. You can be proud that you've forced me to execute this sword strike." A dignified marquis of the empire had been defeated, and he was even criticized in such a manner. This was no different from ridicule and ridicule. In the end, the marquis was so angry that his face turned green, and he left in a rage. Next, great figures stood out one after another, and every one of them could be said to be an illustrious figure of the older generation. But in the end, they were all defeated by Qingzhe like a hot knife through butter. From the beginning until the end, no one had been able to block Qingzhe's second sword strike. At this point, the atmosphere of the banquet had become extremely stiff, and the faces of all the great figures of the empire were ashen, and they were silent. All of this was too great a blow to them. A young man from the Heavenly Sword sect had successively defeated one of their top figures, and the impact and shock they felt was indescribable and depressing. Similarly, Qingzhe's strength was also amazing. He didn't stand up from the beginning to the end. He was casual and calm, drinking and waving his sword, which seemed very relaxed and perfunctory. But the more he behaved like this, the more people couldn't see through him. It was impossible to guess how terrible the power would be when Qingzhe attacked with all his strength. In the end, the banquet ended on a bad note. But the performance of Qingzhe at the banquet soon spread out, which made all the major forces in the Forbidden City fall into an unprecedented shock. He was too strong. It was incredible that a successor disciple of the Heavenly Sword sect defeated many great figures of the empire while talking and laughing and drinking. Under such circumstances, it caused such a great sensation in the Forbidden City on this day when it was suddenly heard that Qingzhe, the successor of the Heavenly Sword sect, took the initiative to issue a letter of challenge to Lin, the head of Heart Cleansing Peak. It was really incredible. At the royal banquet, Qingzhe flatly refused the toast of a group of great figures without giving them any face. But now, he took the initiative to challenge Lin Sun, which seemed very strange. Nowadays, everyone knew that Lin Sun could be called the peerless talent of the young generation of the empire and had the dazzling title of crowning the whole capital. But then again, Lin Sun was just in the Tao Insight realm after all. But Qingzhe, who was in the early stage of reincarnation development realm, didn't challenge a great practitioner with higher cultivation than him, but Lin Sun, who was in a lower realm than him. Of course, it seemed very strange. Something big is going to happen. Many practitioners were worried. Subconsciously, they all regarded Lin Sun as one of their own. After all, they were all practitioners of the empire, while Qingzhe was an outsider from the ancient desolation territory. Under such circumstances, they would definitely choose to stand on Lin Sun's side. But thinking of Qingzhe's terrible strength, even the practitioners of the empire doubted whether Lin Sun had a chance to win if he really accepted the challenge. Qingzhe has gone too far. Lin Sun is the leader of the young generation of our empire. Once Lin Sun is defeated by him, doesn't it mean that all the practitioners of the young generation of the empire will be under his feet? There were also practitioners who were extremely resentful. It's definitely not so simple. Don't forget that the bloody incident that happened in Heart-Cleansing Peak more than 10 years ago was done by a descendant of the Heaven-Reaching Sword sect. Now, Qingzhe from the Heaven-Reaching Sword sect points his spear at Lin Sun. Is it possible that he wants to kill Lin Sun completely? There was also a practitioner of the older generation who was shocked. He thought that Qingzhe did this for another purpose, to destroy Lin Sun. Alas, who could imagine that Lin Sun, who had been silent for half a year, was targeted by Qingzhe as soon as he showed up today and caused such a stir. It's hard to predict whether he will be lucky or not. Fortunately, I heard that Lin Sun has refused this challenge and said casually that he has no time to fool around with Qingzhe. No, this challenge has attracted the attention of the whole Forbidden City. Under such circumstances, if Lin Sun flinches and avoids the challenge, he will not only lose his face. All kinds of comments like a hurricane set off in every corner of the Forbidden City. Overnight, the challenge between Qingzhe and Lin Sun became the hottest topic and attracted everyone's attention. Would Lin Sun accept the challenge? Everyone was paying close attention to it. On the top of Heart-Cleansing Peak, the clouds and mist were misty and the mountain was dense. The scenery was beautiful. Lin Sun sat there casually. There was a huge rectangular black jade in front of him. The jade was full of mysterious and obscure fluctuations. In the jade, there was a little girl lying quietly. The little girl wore a black cloak, and she had a breathtakingly beautiful face. Her beauty was like a masterpiece created by the heavens, and it was sufficient to make the world dim in comparison. She lay quietly on the jade stone, her hands interlaced on her lower abdomen, forming a strange seal. Her eyes were closed, and her expression was tranquil. As she breathed, there was a unique rhythm, as if she had fallen into an eternal slumber. It could be clearly seen that wisps of black brilliance like the eternal night flew up and down her body like a light rain. The little girl was Shia Solstice, who was carrying out the second quietus. I don't know when this girl will wake up. After a long time, Lin Sun took back his eyes and sighed in his heart. Shia Solstice practiced the mysterious 9 revolutions nirvana scripture. Every time her power was awakened, it would be accompanied by a quietus, which produced a new transformation similar to reincarnation. This was the second quietus of Shia Solstice, which had started before Lin Sun went to the Soul Oblivion Sea. Unfortunately, this quietus had not ended until now, which seemed to be too long. Finally, Lin Sun carefully put Shia Solstice, who was sleeping in the black jade, into the first floor of the wordless pagoda. Lin Sun had decided to take Shia Solstice with him when he went to the ancient desolation territory. Because when this little girl woke up from the quietus, her previous memory would be completely cut off and erased. The only person she could remember was him. "Young master, things are not good. Qingzhe, the future leader of the sky-reaching sword sect, has come in person. Now he is waiting outside our heart-cleansing peak." In the distance, Lin Zhong suddenly ran in a hurry. Chapter 756. Did he just block the door? Lin Sun was stunned. Yesterday, he just refused the challenge from Qingzhe. But it was only a day later that Qingzhe came to Heart-Cleansing Peak, which surprised Lin Sun. Yes, this man is very calm. He prepared his own desk and futon and sat in front of Heart-Cleansing Peak, drinking and sipping tea. It seems that if you don't show up, he will definitely wait like this. Lin Zhong frowned and looked a little dignified. Just now, he had personally seen Qingzhe. This young man's appearance was handsome, and he had a pair of brilliant green pupils. As he sat there casually, his bearing was outstanding, calm, and unhurried. He was definitely an extremely terrifying expert. When he thought that Qingzhe had easily defeated the big shots of the Empire at the royal banquet a few days ago, Lin Zhong became more and more worried. With the cultivation of the early stage of reincarnation developing realm, Qingzhe was able to defeat the older generation of reincarnation developing realm practitioners of the Empire. From beginning to end, no one could resist his 3 swords, which was too terrible. It was definitely not good news for Lin Zhong that such a young man with a terrible background, cultivation and combat capability insisted on challenging Lin Sun. "I heard that no one could resist his 3 swords after arriving at the Forbidden City?" Lin Sun was thoughtful. "That's true." Lin Zhong nodded and said worriedly, "Young master, this man is not friendly. Since he insists on doing this, I'm afraid his intention is not simple. Of course, as a practitioner of reincarnation developing realm, he took the initiative to challenge me. Even a blind man can see that something is wrong." Lin Sun said casually, "I even suspect that Qingzhe is instructed by Yunqi Bai." Yunqi Bai. At the mention of this name, Lin Zhong's eyes also showed deep hatred. More than 10 years ago, the lineal clansmen of Lin family were all killed by this man. "Young master, how are you going to deal with it? As long as he doesn't make trouble, let him sit there and drink tea. I'm not in the mood to fight with a guy with bad intentions." Lin Sun answered calmly. As he spoke, he had already taken out the wordless pagoda. When the old toad returned from the Soul Oblivion Sea, it had started to cultivate in seclusion to make a breakthrough, but until now, there was no sign of it breaking out of seclusion. Lin Sun sensed carefully and found that old toad's breath was smooth and smooth, which made him feel relieved. This proved that old toad didn't encounter any danger during its closed-door training. According to old toad, he'll need at least 1 to 3 years to complete this breakthrough. If that's the case, I'm afraid I'll have left for the ancient desolation territory by then. Lin was lost in thought. Lin Zhong, who was at the side, finally confirmed that what the young master said just now wasn't a joke. He really didn't intend to fight with Qingzhe. That's good too. At least I don't have to worry about young master being in any danger. Lin Zhong accepted the order and left. Outside Heart-Cleansing Peak, a figure appeared on the originally wide and flat road. Even though he was sitting cross-legged on a praying mat, his posture was still extremely straight. He had long silver hair, like brilliant silver brilliance. His eyes were cyan, flowing with frightening luster when they opened and closed. On the table in front of him, there was a pot of wine and a pot of tea. At this moment, he was drinking comfortably as if he was in his own courtyard. He seemed very comfortable and free. This person was Qingzhe, the inherited disciple of the heaven-reaching sword sect. He was very young, in his 20s. His forehead was full, and his skin was like crystal jade, and shrouded with brilliant luster. His temperament was very extraordinary and refined. Beside Qingzhe, Chenfeng, a servant, stood upright. Although he was a servant, he was handsome and had an outstanding temperament. His style was far beyond that of ordinary practitioners. The master and the servant waited there like this, appearing to be fearless and full of confidence. The arrival of Qingzhe completely made the area outside heart-cleansing peak the focus of the major forces in the Forbidden City. At this moment, in the nearby area, there were dense figures of practitioners, all watching and paying close attention to it. Qingzhe is too strong. He came directly and blocked in front of the gate of Lin family. He's forcing Lin family to abdicate. Some practitioners were secretly shocked. It's conceivable that if Lin soon doesn't accept the challenge, Qingzhe will never give up. No, if Lin soon doesn't accept the challenge, the impact will be far more than that. It will make everyone think that Lin Sun is afraid and doesn't come out. This will definitely be a heavy blow to Lin Sun's prestige. Many practitioners analyzed and finally came to a unanimous conclusion. If Qingzhe was allowed to block the gate of heart-cleansing peak, the longer it took, the more disadvantageous it would be to Lin Sun's prestige. Now, Lin Sun had the title of crowning the whole capital. He was a peerless and leader-like figure in the younger generation of the empire. If even he didn't dare to accept the challenge from Qingzhe, didn't it mean that the younger generation of the empire had been trampled under Qingzhe's feet? The impact was a little serious. He's going too far. He is only at the early stage of reincarnation developing realm, but he wants to fight with Lin Sun, who is at the Tao Insight realm. This is obviously bullying. There were also practitioners who were indignant. Alas, it's not a big deal. At the royal banquet a few days ago, didn't a big shot of reincarnation developing realm, who was stronger than Qingzhe, also take action? But the final result you all know. Under such circumstances, even if Lin Sun accepts the challenge, his chance to win is slim. Someone sighed. Before the challenge began, it had set off a big wave in the Forbidden City and attracted the attention of the whole city. Many practitioners were eager for Lin Sun to take action and teach Qingzhe from the ancient wilderness territory a lesson, so as to break his spirit and make the empire proud. But at the same time, many practitioners were not optimistic and thought that Lin Sun had almost no hope of winning. After all, Xianzhe's combat power was so great that even a great practitioner at the consummation of reincarnation development realm couldn't resist his 3 swords, let alone Lin Sun, who only had the cultivation of Tao Insight realm. What should come will come after all. In the distance, Zhao Tailai also came in person. But compared with the pessimism of other practitioners, he looked a little different at the moment. If Qingzhe knew Lin Sun's fierce performance in the bloodthirsty battlefield, I don't know whether he would dare to block the gate so openly. Zhao Tailai's mood at the moment was really wonderful, with a hint of schadenfreude. Some of the bigwigs from the imperial army also wore strange expressions and remained silent, as if they were waiting to watch a good show. Others didn't know, but they all knew how much Lin Sun had made in the bloodthirsty battlefield in the past 6 months. 4 or 5 half-step King Realm practitioners were killed by him. Under such circumstances, Qingzhe took the initiative to challenge Lin Sun. Did he really think that Lin Sun, a young man at the Tao Insight realm, was easy to bully? Of course, they wouldn't warn Qingzhe. They were all waiting to see Qingzhe's good performance. However, to everyone's surprise, it didn't take long for a servant of Lin family of heart-cleansing peak to come out and say, "My master is busy now and has no time to pay attention to these things. If child Qingzhe wants, you can drink and have tea here." With that, he swaggered off. All the people present were stunned. Obviously, Lin Sun directly refused the challenge and left Qingzhe here. It seemed that he didn't intend to pay attention to Qingzhe at all. How could he do this? Isn't he afraid to fight? Lin Sun has never been afraid of these things before. Many practitioners were very disappointed. They thought that Lin Sun's action was undoubtedly encouraging Qingzhe's arrogance and weakening his own prestige. Qingzhe is nothing. Should we accept his challenge? What a joke. I think child Lin's action is very wise and gratifying. There were also many practitioners who expressed their support for Lin Sun's action. How dare he be so rude? It's okay for him to say that he doesn't dare to accept the challenge, but he has to come up with so many reasons. It's despicable. In the distance, Chen Feng frowned and disdained Lin Sun's decision. He thought that Lin Sun was timid and didn't dare to accept the challenge. Qing Zhe was very calm. He held the teacup and sipped the tea and said calmly, "It doesn't matter. Let's wait. I have enough patience. Sooner or later, he will have to come out and fight." "Master, with your current status and cultivation, why do you have to do this?" Chen Feng was a little puzzled. He thought that Lin Sun was not qualified to fight with Qing Zhe at all, but Qing Zhe insisted on doing this. "According to what I know, this person should have set foot on the legendary path of the strongest Tao. I'm very curious. In the mortal world, the Tao is incomplete, but this person can achieve this step. Don't you think it's interesting?" Qing Zhe said leisurely, playing with the green mutton fat jade cup in his hand. However, there was something he didn't say. According to his understanding, this young man named Lin Sun should have died more than 10 years ago, but he miraculously survived. There were too many noteworthy points in this. The path of the strongest Tao. Chen Feng's pupils suddenly shrank, and his heart was shocked. He was really a little surprised. After all, in the ancient wilderness, there were not many geniuses who could set foot on such a path. But in such a barren mortal world, there was a young man who could achieve this step, which was really incredible. Qing Zhe, who was ignored by Lin Sun, chose to wait. From the beginning to the end, he didn't show any emotion. It seemed that he would wait until Lin Sun had to accept the challenge. This made the practitioners who paid attention to all this in the distance secretly shocked. They more and more realized that Qing Zhe's purpose and intention of challenging Lin Sun was absolutely not simple. At the same time, Lin Sun also knew Qing Zhe's attitude. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and said, "This guy is going to fight with me to the death. Boy, what on earth do you think? Don't you feel ashamed to be blocked in front of your house?" Today's event has attracted the attention of the whole Forbidden City. If you let Qing Zhe block in front of your house, how can your Lin family keep a foothold in the Forbidden City in the future? Before long, Zhao Tailai took the initiative to come to Lin Sun. As soon as they met, he directly asked Lin Sun how to solve this matter. Lin Sun was surprised and said, "Senior, according to your tone, you can't wait for me to fight with Qing Zhe?" Zhao Tailai chuckled and said, "If you're confident, then go ahead and fight. If you're not, then there's no harm in hiding. But then again, don't you want to know exactly what Qing Zhe's coming here for?" Lin Sun sneered and said, "In the end, you can't wait for me to go out and fight with him." Zhao Tailai said seriously, "I'm anxious for you. All the practitioners in the Forbidden City are looking forward to your appearance. You can suppress this guy's arrogance, so that he won't be arrogant and bully our empire. What's the benefit?" Lin Sun asked with a smile. Zhao Tailai stared at him and said, "I'm here to help you solve your problems, but you take the opportunity to blackmail me? Let me tell you, if you really don't want to accept the challenge, then I won't force you. However, if my niece, Jing Xian, were to find out that the man she fancied is hiding like a coward while she is serving the empire, guess how disappointed and heartbroken she would be?" Lin Sun suddenly got a headache. This old fox was too shameless. In order to let Lin Sun fight, he even used Zhao Jingshuan's name. Chapter 757. I felt like I didn't have enough words to apologize, but if I said too much, it would seem like I was trying to excuse myself, so I felt very conflicted. But no matter what, I saw everyone's comments, attacks, insults, disappointment, and so on. The only conclusion I could come to was that I was really ashamed. Really, I didn't dare to say how much change 17 years would bring, but at the very least, I would try my best to write even harder than last year and make up for all the missed updates. Chapter 758. Finally, Lin Sun agreed. Zhao Tailai had mentioned Zhao Jingxian. If he still didn't agree, it would be too cowardly and cowardly. What's more, Zhao Tailai was right. Being challenged by a successor of heaven-reaching sword sect, Lin Sun would be looked down upon by the world if he ignored him. In front of the gate of heart-cleansing peak, Qing Zhe was drinking and sipping tea by himself with a calm and indifferent look. That kind of motionless posture made him more extraordinary. In the distance, when Gu Dongting saw this scene, he twisted his beard and smiled with a touch of appreciation in his eyes. Gu Dongting was the elder of heaven-reaching sword sect who came to Xiao Empire this time. He was a real life-death realm master with unfathomable strength and extraordinary status. His appearance was clean and tidy. His beard and hair were like frost and snow, but his skin was as white as a baby's. With a horsetail whisk in his hand, he stood there casually, giving people a lofty momentum. This young friend Qing Zhe deserves to be a successor disciple of heaven-reaching sword sect. His temperament is leisurely and elegant. Next to him, a big shot sighed with emotion. Yes, an outstanding young man like Qing Zhe is like a rock in the sky. Only an ancient orthodoxy like heaven-reaching sword sect can cultivate such an outstanding talent. Voices of appreciation sounded one after another. Gu Dongting was accompanied by a group of bigwigs from Zhou family and Qin family. When there is no tiger in the mountain, the monkey is the king. Lin Sun thinks he can be the best among the young generation of the empire. Doesn't he know that in the eyes of the ancient desolation territory, he is just a frog in a well? Some bigwigs snorted and expressed their disdain for Lin Sun. Speaking of which, there was no doubt that Zhou family and Qin family were the happiest about Cyan Ninja's challenge to Lin Sun. In the past, because of Lin Sun, the Zhou family and the Qin family were disgraced and had to swallow their anger. But now it was different. Qing Zhe was a successor disciple of heaven-reaching sword sect. His cultivation was peerless. At the royal banquet a few days ago, he even suppressed a group of bigwig. Under such circumstances, the bigwigs of Zhou family and Qin family hoped that Qing Zhe could suppress Lin Sun's arrogance. It would be even better if Qing Zhe could be disabled. Gu Dongting just listened, smiling without saying a word, appearing very reserved. Look, Lin Sun is out. Suddenly, there was an exclamation in the distance, which attracted the attention of the whole audience. Looking over, they saw a handsome young man walking out of the gate of heart-cleansing peak. It was Lin Sun. The whole audience was shocked. Many people thought that Lin Sun would not show up casually. After all, this challenge was too dangerous. Once he failed, it would be a great blow to Lin's prestige. That was why Lin Sun's appearance caused a sensation in the field. He's actually going to accept the challenge? Some practitioners were worried. The dreadfulness of Cyanja had already spread throughout the Forbidden City. Even the big shots in reincarnation developing realm couldn't resist his three-strike. How could Lin Sun be his match? That's good as well. Instead of being obstructed by others and enduring silently and aggrievedly, why don't we fight to our heart's content and let that Cyanja taste the might of our empire's cultivators? Some people were excited and had blind confidence in Lin Sun. Lin Sun had too many brilliant achievements in the past. Since Lin Sun dared to show up, he must be confident. As for the clansmen of Zhou and Qin family, they all widened their eyes at the moment as if they couldn't believe it. But soon they were all excited. They couldn't wait to see Lin Sun's downfall. Lin Sun appeared. For a time, the outside world couldn't calm down. From the moment Cyanja sent out the letter of challenge, this duel caused a sensation in the whole Forbidden City and attracted the attention of many major forces. One was an inherited disciple of the heaven-reaching sword sect, who once suppressed a group of big shots in reincarnation developing realm with three strike. His fighting power was outstanding and peerless. The other was a young man of the empire, who was known as the crown of the whole capital. He also had many dazzling halos. It was not hard to imagine how shocking the battle between the two would be if it were to happen. When Lin Sun appeared, Cyanja was drinking. He was a little surprised that Lin Sun would show up so soon. After that, his expression recovered its composure, and he placed the wine cup in his hand on the table before standing up. It was just a simple action, but in an instant, the whole audience became silent, and all eyes were cast on him. Qing's figure was tall, slender, and dignified. His brilliant silver hair carried a crystalline luster, and he could be said to be extremely handsome. His skin was white and his eyes were like green gems. When he stood up, his entire body was like a javelin, majestic and terrifying. Even the practitioners who disliked Qing had to admit that his appearance was too good. With one glance, they could tell that he was a proud son of heaven who was destined to shine. Some practitioners of the older generation looked solemn. Different from when he was sitting idle before, Xianzhe at this moment had a kind of restrained sharpness, which made people's hearts palpitate. Be careful. This guy's attainments in swordsmanship are extremely terrifying. Moreover, he is a direct descendant of the ancient green crane and has awakened a talent secret method. Zhao Tailai reminded Lin Sun from behind. Lin Sun nodded and walked down from the mountain gate. His black hair was long to his waist, and his skin was crystal like jade, flowing with brilliant luster. His pace was neither too fast nor too slow, and his figure was tall and elegant, with a sense of transcendence. This boy is not bad. In the distance, Gu Dongting was a little surprised. Although he is not bad, he is too arrogant and has a bad character. The bigwigs of the Zhua and Qin families were slightly uncomfortable. They didn't like Lin Sun at all. On the contrary, they all wanted Lin Sun to die quickly. Gu Dongting smiled and said, I see. Then we can take this opportunity to let Xianzhe grind his arrogance and bones. That's the best. The bigwigs of the Zhua and Qin families were overjoyed. In the distance, Xianzhe stared at Lin Sun, who was standing 30 meters away, and said, You show up at this time. Can't you keep calm? His words were flat, and his expression was very calm. His eyes were cold and frightening, with a sense of condescension. You are not the only one here. I can't let everyone wait too long, so as not to waste their time. As for you, you are not enough to affect my state of mind. Lin Sun was also looking at Xianzhe. Even he had to admit that judging from his appearance and breath, this guy was indeed very unusual. Even Xiao Ran, Su Xingfeng of the Holy Land of Spirit Treasure, and the top saints in the depths of the Soul Oblivion Sea were slightly inferior to this guy. But this was normal. After all, this guy was in the reincarnation development realm, which had long surpassed the Tao insight realm. Moreover, he was an inherited disciple of the heaven-reaching sword sect, so it was reasonable for him to have such an elegant demeanor. I heard that you have set foot on the path of the strongest Tao. Today I come to see it. In order to be fair, I will suppress part of my strength, lest others laugh at me for bullying you. When Xianzhe spoke, there seemed to be lightning flashing in his eyes, and there was a faint curve at the corner of his mouth. Under that calm appearance, there was an absolute disdain and conceit. This shocked the whole audience. Many practitioners looked uncertain. Suppressing his own strength to have a fair fight with Lin Sun? Xianzhe's move was undoubtedly very domineering, and it showed how much confidence he had. Is that so? Before the fight, I am very curious. Are you not worried that you will be killed here today? Lin Sun asked. Arrogant. Reckless. In the distance, the big shots of the Zhua and Qin families almost laughed out of anger. At this time, this guy was still as impetuous as before. Did he really think that Xianzhe was so easy to deal with? You are right. This guy is indeed very arrogant. Even Gu Dongting frowned slightly, and his expression became somewhat cold. It seems that you are very conceited, but excessive conceit is stupid, especially in front of me. You are not qualified to say such words. Xianzhe seemed very calm. He looked at Lin Sun with a scrutinizing gaze, and there was a kind of frightening aura spreading. His hair was crystal clear, silver, and overflowing with divine splendor. The chi and blood in his body roared, and it was so terrifying that it made the whole world tremble. His words were very contemptuous, which made the practitioners of the empire angry. At the same time, they were a little worried. This Cyanja was too confident. Who wouldn't worry about Lin Sun? In this case, why don't we make a bet? If you lose, you will answer 2 of my questions truthfully. What do you think? Lin Sun smiled very calmly. Cyanja frowned, and his expression was still very calm, but his eyes became colder. He looked at Lin Sun with an almost condescending attitude, and said, "What if you lose?" "At your disposal," Lin Sun said without hesitation. Hearing this, all the practitioners of the empire were shocked. This was no different from signing a life and death contract. Wasn't Lin Sun worried at all? Cyanja smiled, which was extremely rare, but his smile was very cold. "Originally, I didn't intend to kill you. But now, since you insist on seeking death, I will fulfill your wish." His words were also extremely domineering. It was a form of absolute arrogance and conceit. No matter who was his enemy, when they heard these words, they would probably feel very uncomfortable. But in the eyes of Gu Dongting, this was a matter of course. Cyanja had such confidence and capital. Lin Sun smiled and said, "Then let's fight." Cyanja responded with an "oh." His whole body shone, and one could keenly perceive that his breath was a little weaker than before. Obviously, as he said, he disdained to bully Lin Sun by relying on his cultivation, so he suppressed his own strength. Boom! The next moment, a great battle broke out. Cyanja strode out, his clothes fluttering, and his long silver hair flying. His figure rushed out like a divine rainbow, and disappeared in an instant. When he appeared again, he was already in front of Lin Sun. His palms and fingers formed a handprint, surrounded by bright and sharp green clouds, and smashed at Lin Sun. The air exploded, and the handprint forcibly crushed a vacuum mark, which was almost able to smash a mountain. Chapter 759. As soon as Cyanja made his move, his swift, decisive, and terrifying means shocked everyone present and many imperial practitioners. Obviously, he wanted to suppress Lin Sun by force and trample him under his feet in a domineering manner. Lin Sun didn't dodge. He waved his right palm and used the Swanee seal to blast forward like a Swanee beast soaring into the sky. The momentum was equally shocking and caused the air to explode. Boom! It was as if the mountains were collapsing and the ground was cracking. The sound of the collision was like the rumbling of thunder from the ninth heaven. It shook everyone's eardrums and made their blood boil. The imperial practitioners were extremely nervous and worried for Lin Sun. They were afraid that he wouldn't be able to block Cyanja's attack. After all, this guy was too terrifying. As for the clansmen of the Zhua and Qin clans, they wore smiles on their faces. They were relaxed and excited. They didn't think Lin Sun was a match for Cyanja because the disparity in strength was too great. Only Gu Dongting remained silent. He knew very well that if the young man had really set foot on the path of absolute cultivation, he wouldn't be suppressed so easily. On the battlefield, the divine radiance collapsed and shook violently. It was as if 2 volcanoes were colliding and emitting terrifying light wave. The aftermath of the collision was like a stormy sea that swept in all directions. The nearby rocks, roads, and vegetation were all destroyed in an instant. Smoke and dust filled the air. The 2 of them fought barehanded. One was tall and dignified, fierce and disdainful like an unsheathed peerless sword. The other was ethereal, surrounded by brilliant radiance. They fought with each other, and the terrifying fluctuations were dazzling to the point that people couldn't open their eyes. In an instant, they had already fought dozens of times. The speed and strength were so terrifying that it caused the heaven and earth to fall into great turmoil. The wind and clouds changed color and everything collapsed. The clansmen of the Zhua and Qin clans were stunned. Cyanja, who possessed peerless strength and whose attacks were so fierce and terrifying, was actually blocked. Moreover, it was in a head-on confrontation. Their hearts trembled and they felt incredulous. They opened their eyes wide, and the relaxed expression on their faces disappeared without a trace. The smiles on their faces also froze. Cyanja suppressed his own strength, which gave this kid a chance to breathe and turn around. Don't worry, his defeat has long been determined. It's only a matter of time. A noble of the Zwa clan comforted. Boom! The ground cracked and collapsed inch by inch. Dirt and gravel swept out like waves, and ear-piercing sounds of explosions could be heard in the air as divine radiance wreaked havoc in the void. This was a terrifying scene caused by the intense confrontation between the two of them. It was indeed too intense. At this moment, in front of the gate of Heart-Cleansing Peak, many practitioners of major forces gathered. The whole Forbidden City was paying attention to this battle. Originally, many practitioners of the Empire were still worried about Lin Sun and on Tenterhook, but soon they were all shocked and attracted to this unprecedented duel. There was no doubt that this was a peerless battle at the peak of the world, and it was too rare and unprecedented. Bang! Not long after, the two of them separated from each other. However, very quickly, the two of them unleashed even more terrifying attack. The blazing rain of divine radiance was like a raging storm that drowned the figures of the two of them. They moved swiftly and flickered, causing the spectators to be dazzled and practically forget to breathe. Even the big shots of the older generation couldn't help but be moved. It was hard to imagine how such two young people could have such terrible power. One was more abnormal than the other. As for some ordinary cultivators, they were completely dumbfounded and stunned on the spot. This kind of power was completely beyond their imagination. Every collision was enough to destroy the mountains, crack the sea, and collapse the universe. It was like the sun and the moon competing for brilliance. Humph! In the battlefield, Cyanja snorted coldly. His fierce attack was blocked, and he failed to defeat this opponent immediately, which made him a little unhappy. Boom! Cyanja's momentum became more and more powerful. His whole body was like a big furnace, burning with divine radiance and soaring into the sky. His long silver hair was flying like a god, shining brightly. So strong! Some practitioners of reincarnation developing realm all changed their faces. They felt the horror of Cyanja's power. Negative bump. Lin Sun's figure suddenly stretched out, and his back burst out with divine radiance like a big dragon, and a phantom of a negative bump emerged. This was the secret inheritance of the first transformation of the 9 changes of Calamity Dragon. Now that Lin Sun displayed it, its power became different from before. Negative bump swept across the sky, as if it was going to crash the world, and released a terrible aura of destruction. Bang! In an instant, everyone could clearly see that Cyanja's figure was hit, and he almost staggered and flew out. The whole audience was shocked. Even the calm Gu Dongting couldn't help but slightly squint at this moment. After this blow, Cyanja's eyes suddenly became cold. Silver danced wildly, and his whole body bloomed with green light like burning flames. Rumble! His power was skyrocketing, and the void around him collapsed inch by inch. The wind and clouds around him changed dramatically, and the sky was dyed green by the dense light. In the end, as he breathed, the world trembled, and the scene was very frightening. The clansmen of the Zwa family, the Qin family, and the practitioners of other empires were all a little frightened at this moment. They felt the horror of Cyanja. He was definitely a very terrible and outstanding figure of the young generation. At this time, Cyanja was indeed extremely dangerous. A pair of green pupils burst out a pair of frightening light beams. Whoosh! His figure flashed and disappeared. The next moment, he appeared in front of Lin Sun. Boom! His hands condensed into an ancient seal, surrounded by green electric arcs, as if thunder and lightning gathered in it. The terrible aura made even the practitioners of reincarnation developing realm feel numb. Lin Sun was not afraid. His aura became more and more ethereal with a sense of perfection. The clear light around him was illusory, clear and clean. Even his hair was shining, and his black eyes were surging with frightening flames. If Cyanja didn't suppress his power, Lin Sun might be cautious. But he did, which made Lin Sun have no fear. Suppress, Cyanja whispered. His whole body was like a green sun, with a powerful and unparalleled fierce aura, and he rushed over. Lin Sun displayed the inheritance of the 9 changes of Calamity Dragon. Like a legendary divine dragon, he displayed all kinds of miraculous forms. Ice Dragon Steps, Bodhisattva Bump, Bashya Block, and Swanee Seal were all at his fingertip. The two fought again, like swords and sabers, and also like the collision of ancient holy mountains. The terrible aftermath of the collision made many practitioners of the Empire change their faces frequently and avoid far away. Boom! There, the world was in disorder. There was a big abyss-like pit, and the cracked ground spread like a broken cobweb. That scene was indeed too terrifying. In the nearby area, more and more practitioners of the Empire came to pay attention to the battle after hearing the news. In front of the gate of Heart-Cleansing Peak, Vulture, Young Ku, Lin Zhong, Zhu Laosan and Lin Huiyuan were also watching. In the dark, many big shots fixed their eyes on this place, paying close attention to every detail of this battle. At this time, everyone could see that it was difficult for Cyanja to defeat Lin Sun in a short time under the suppression of his own realm. Lin Sun's amazing performance also refreshed many practitioners of the Empire's cognition of him, so they were surprised and surprised. Indeed, most people did not expect that after half a year of silence, Lin Sun's strength had become more and more unfathomable. This is the power of the peerless Tao, Gu Dongting murmured to himself. Looking at the big shots of the Zhou family and the Qin family next to him, they were all surprised and doubtful. Puff! After a while, there was a sudden burst of blood in the field, which was extremely eye-catching. At the same time, a figure staggered back more than 30 meters in the void, with blood spilling from the corner of his mouth. The whole audience was shocked because it was not Lin Sun who was defeated, but Cyanja. This result stunned many people. They couldn't believe it. It was too unexpected and caused too great an impact. And the big shots of the Zhou family and the Qin family were even more shocked. How could this be possible? They also didn't expect such a scene. Before, many people were worried about Lin Sun and almost didn't think he had a chance to win. After all, Cyanja was too strong. Even a practitioner at the full completion of reincarnation developing realm couldn't resist his 3-sword. But now, he was the first to be injured in the duel and defeated by Lin Sun, who only had the cultivation of Tao Insight realm. This reversal was indeed a little too sudden. I'm afraid it's not possible to suppress the realm. Gu Dongting frowned. In the battlefield, Lin Sun's black hair fluttered, and his whole body was surrounded by illusory clear light. He stood there unscathed like an immortal. He glanced at Cyanja and said, "Use all your strength, otherwise, you will only lose more miserably." There was a dead silence in the field. In the distance, Cyanja gently wiped the blood stains from the corner of his mouth. His face was a little pale. On his left shoulder there was a collapsed fist mark, with blood flowing out, which was shocking. Such a scene shocked everyone. Earlier, Cyanja's arrogance made many practitioners think that Lin Sun would be in a disadvantageous position in this duel and might be defeated. But as the battle began and the two fiercely fought, Lin Sun's amazing performance shocked everyone. Until now, the scene of Cyanja being injured made everyone feel like they were in a dream. This is a true disciple of Heavenly Sword Sect, a real talent. How could he be the first to be injured? The big shots of the Zhou and Qin families were very sad and unwilling to believe this fact. He suppressed his realm and didn't use all his strength. And don't forget that Cyanja's strongest skill is swordsmanship. Until now, he has never used this kind of power. Watch patiently. The one who will lose in the end will definitely not be Cyanja. Gudongting's words made the big shots of the Zhua and Qin families feel refreshed and refreshed. In fact, Gudongting's words were not false. He knew Cyanja very well. This successor had the strength to match his pride. He could be called an outstanding talent in Heavenly Sword Sect, and his performance was extremely good. His previous injury could only be attributed to carelessness. Gudongting was very sure that when Cyanja really began to get serious, all this was bound to be reversed and changed. Chapter 760. He's too strong. These days, the rumor about Cyanja made all the imperial practitioners feel depressed. A young disciple of a sect had suppressed all the big shots of the empire at the banquet of the royal family. Who could feel happy about this? Now, seeing Lin Sun's great power and being the first to injure Cyanja in a head-on confrontation, the imperial practitioners were naturally excited. However, the cheers and excitement didn't last long. The atmosphere became deathly silent and tense again. The reason was that Qingja's aura had changed once more. He was like a primeval ferocious beast that had been jolted awake from its slumber, and a shapeless and terrifying aura swept out from his body, causing all the cultivators from the empire to feel cold while they felt an indescribable pressure. At this moment, Cyanja's whole body seemed to be burning with blue divine flames. His silver long hair fluttered in the wind like a waterfall of the Milky Way, and his eyes shot out a terrifying divine light. If the Qingja from before was like a peerless blade, then at this moment, he was like a seething volcano that contained a terrifying aura capable of obliterating the heavens and the earth, and he was on the verge of exploding. It could be clearly seen that the collapsed and injured part of his left shoulder was instantly restored to its original state, without a trace of injury to be found. Not only that, Cyanja stood there casually at this moment, making the world tremble. He was much stronger than before. Oh no! All the top big shots of the empire changed their faces. Obviously, Cyanja was angry and no longer suppressed his power. I've already experienced the power of the Absolute Tao. It's really extraordinary that you can make me suffer a little injury. Cyanja's voice was calm, but his power was more terrible. His eyes were shining, bursting with divine light. But do you really think you can defeat me like this? As he spoke, he took a step forward, and the void collapsed and wailed. The destructive power made all the top figures of reincarnation developing realm tremble. Too strong. This might be the real power that Cyanja possessed. Before, he suppressed his realm, so he was injured because of carelessness. But now it was destined to be different. Good. A big shot of the Zhua family was so excited that he couldn't help shouting. Immediately, he received angry stares from the imperial practitioners. The big shot of the Zhua family knew he had lost his composure and immediately shut his mouth. However, he was sneering in his heart. He was looking forward to the upcoming battle. Facing Cyanja, who had become more powerful, Lin Sun also took a step forward. He didn't retreat. His posture was elegant, ethereal, and the aura around him had a sense of perfection. I just don't understand. Previously, you even said that you would suppress your cultivation level and fight me fairly. Now that you see that the situation is not good, you go back on your word. Could it be that your Heavenly Sword sect has gone back on your word? Lin Sun's words were very casual, but there was a hint of sarcasm in them, which made all the practitioners of the empire want to laugh, but they couldn't. But this was indeed the case. Previously, Qingja had arrogantly expressed that he would suppress his realm and fight fairly with Lin Sun. But now, he suddenly changed his mind. This behavior was indeed shameful. Impudent. In the distance, Gudongting's eyes turned cold. He didn't expect that Lin Sun would take this opportunity to slander their Heavenly Sword sect. But Qingja's face darkened, and his eyes became extremely terrifying. He stared at Lin Sun and said, "I was polite to you before, but you didn't appreciate it. Instead, you ridiculed me. It seems that you really want to die? His heart was full of killing intent. He had lost face when he was injured before, and now he was ridiculed by Lin Sun in public, which made him completely angry. Boom! In Qing's eyes, a pair of mysterious sword-shaped patterns burst out, crisscrossing in the void, and releasing a sharp and peerless aura of Sword Tao. On the Imperial side, all the practitioners gasped in horror, realizing that Qing was going to use his strongest means of Sword Tao. At the royal banquet, Qing had suppressed all the big shots with his cultivation of Sword Tao. No one could stop his 3 swords. Even the great practitioners at the reincarnation development realm couldn't. This guy is not much inferior to Yun Qinbai at that time. Zhao Tailai's pupils suddenly shrank in the distance. At this moment, Gu Dongting and the big shots of the Zhua and Qin families became calm. Qing was about to use his full strength, which made them no longer worried. Like them, Lin Sun also looked very calm. Although Qing's aura made him feel a kind of pressure, it was not enough to make him afraid. In the end, it's all because of you. Today I finally understand the ability of the successor of the Heavenly Sword sect, Lin Sun sneered. These words stimulated Qing, making his face more calm and cold, and his aura more terrifying. When had a successor disciple of the Heavenly Sword sect been ridiculed like this? But now, in such a barren place like the mortal world, he was repeatedly ridiculed by a young man of Tao Insight realm, which made Qing extremely angry. Chop! He lightly spat out a word, and his killing intent soared into the sky. In the next moment, a dazzling green sword-shaped symbol suddenly shot out from his pupils. Whoosh! The sword-shaped symbol flashed like a vigorous cyan lightning, showing its peerless sharpness, which made the eyes of many practitioners of the Empire sting, as if they were cut by a sword. Daybreak! Some big shots of the Empire exclaimed and recognized this strike. At the royal banquet, Qing once displayed this kind of swordsmanship inheritance. Under this sword, like the rising sun, the light was peerless, collapsing the darkness. But this time, the sword of daybreak was obviously more terrible. It was condensed by invisible sword intent and controlled by the spirit, which was mysterious and unparalleled. Spirit. It was the spiritual power that could only be condensed by the strong practitioners of reincarnation development realm. There was no doubt that the swordsmanship inheritance mastered by Qing had involved the magical use of the spirit power. Such swordsmanship was rare and peerless in the whole empire. This strike undoubtedly reflected how terrible Qing's foundation was. However, no one noticed that when Lin Sun saw this strike, a strange light flashed in his eyes. Whoosh! In the next moment, a sharp blade like starlight swept out from between Lin Sun's eyebrows. It was as white as snow and almost transparent, like a cold flowing light, like a dream. Wordless inheritance of Dao pattern array diagram. This was the first inheritance of Duan Ren, the real secret method of controlling spirit. Different from Qing's, what Lin Sun used was a real, magic weapon. What was a magic weapon? It was a treasure controlled by spirit. It could kill ghosts and gods, break the universe, and disturb yin and yang. Such a treasure was rarely seen in the world today. It was so rare that even the old monsters of life-death realm might not have it. Puff! Under the gaze of everyone present, the moment the broken blade swept out, the peerless secret sword that Qing had slashed out was easily cut apart like a piece of paper, exploding into a rain of light that scattered everywhere. The might of this sword strike was extremely shocking, yet before it could even reveal its might, it was destroyed just like that. In an instant, everyone was struck dumb, and they stood there in a daze, not daring to believe what they were seeing. Puff! In the distance, Qing wanted to kill Lin Sun with absolute force to vent his hatred. But now, like a kite with a broken string, he flew out horizontally, coughing up blood, and his face turned pale in an instant. With a bang, Qing's body fell to the ground, cracking it and sending smoke and dust into the sky. All the people present were dumbfounded. After Qingzhe stopped suppressing his power, the horrible power had already shocked everyone's heart, and they were secretly worried about Lin Sun. After all, even the top figures of reincarnation developing realm couldn't resist 3 swords of Qingzhe. Under such circumstances, could Lin Sun, who was only at Tao Insight Realm, win? However, the result left everyone stupefied. Xianzhe slashed out with his sword, but it was defeated even more miserably than before. This scene was too inconceivable. Oh my God, we were purely worried for young Master Lin. The practitioners who had blind confidence in Lin Sun were a little dumbfounded at this moment. Lin Sun was so powerful that he easily defeated the enemy as if he was dealing with chickens and dogs. His means were too fierce and domineering. Impossible. The big shots of the Zhou family and the Qin family were so shocked that they almost jumped up. They were full of confidence and ready to watch a good show. Who would have thought that in the blink of an eye, it was Qingzhe who was defeated? Fortunately, they had learned their lesson last time and didn't dare to make a sound. Otherwise, if the practitioners of other empires knew what they thought, they would be despised and despised. It's a magic weapon, it's a magic weapon, Gu Dongting's eyes twinkled. He was also a little moved and shocked. His eyes were fixed on the white blade around Lin Sun, and his expression changed. Only he knew that Qingzhe's defeat was not unjust, because it was a real magic weapon. Even in the Heavenly Sword sect, such a treasure could be said to be extremely precious and rare. But the result was too depressing after all. Ha 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 ha. Zhao Tailai in the distance laughed like an old fox who had stolen a chicken. In front of the gate of Heart Cleansing Peak, a group of senior officials and clansmen of Lin family cheered and felt honored. I'm going to kill you. In the field, Qingzhe climbed up from the ground and roared coldly. He was unwilling and furious. He couldn't accept this result. It was a great shame for him to be seriously injured before he used all his strength. Chop! At this moment, Qingzhe no longer had the previous leisurely posture. His silver sword danced wildly and his face was livid. His figure was like a burning volcano, cracking the earth and burning the void. He took out a cyan spiritual sword and attacked Lin Sun. At this time, he was like a cyan sun bursting with divine flame. He couldn't wait to kill Lin Sun with one blow. However, Lin Sun had no fear for a long time. If Qingzhe didn't use such a secret method before, Lin Sun might have to spend a lot of effort to deal with him. But now… Chapter 761. You've been defeated. It's futile to struggle. Lin Sun said. Then the broken blade turned into a white and transparent flowing rainbow. With a clear sound, it swept out in an ethereal and magical manner. It was also the method of spirit control, but Lin Sun used a divine weapon with his spirit, while Qingzhe used a secret sword condensed by his spirit. This was the fundamental difference between the two, so the power was totally different. Obviously, Qingzhe also noticed this, so he took out a cyan spiritual sword this time. Whoosh! The battle broke out again. Like a rainbow, Broken Blade was ethereal and transparent. It easily resolved the opponent's attack. Roar! At the same time, Lin Sun used Paleo Roar. The earth-shattering sound waves turned into visible waves and spread out, shattering the void and flooding all directions. Qingzhe, who was in the fierce battle, suddenly groaned and trembled all over. Despicable! His eyes were terrible and full of anger. His spirit was hurt by the broken blade before, and now his spirit was impacted by the terrible sound waves. He couldn't bear it at once. Despicable? This is a battle. You are an inherited disciple of Heavenly Master Swordsmanship sect. Do you still need me to teach you? Lin Sun used Ice Dragon Steps to launch a strong attack as he spoke. He wanted to suppress his opponent. This time, he didn't hold back at all. He wanted to defeat his opponent at one go and end this battle. Boom! The shadow of Ice Dragon soared into the sky, white and crystal. Lin Sun's speed had reached an appalling level. He flew backward with his black eyes as deep as the abyss. At this moment, he completely showed his power. His peerless posture shocked all the people present. Qingjie was furious. He didn't avoid but fought with Lin Sun directly. Rumble! The void seemed to be blown up. The broken blade danced wildly, the sword edge flowed, and the surging light spread out like a flood, sweeping in all directions. The practitioners who paid attention to this battle were stunned. Qingjie was so powerful before, but he was suppressed by Lin Sun at this moment. He could hardly raise his head. The faces of the bigwigs of Zhuo and Qin families had become extremely gloomy. This result was hard for them to accept. The more dazzling Lin Sun's performance was, the more indignant and depressed they felt, as if they had eaten a dead fly. Bang bang bang! Qingjie felt that his blood and qi were boiling. His hands and feet were numb, and his soul was shaking. There was an indescribable anger and grievance in his heart. How was this possible? He couldn't believe it. He had already stepped into the ranks of the strongest in the wheel-developing realm. His combat strength was outstanding and stunning. Even among the younger generation in the ancient wilderness, he could be considered a genius. Even the average complete wheel-developing realm experts were not worthy of his attention. But now, he was being suppressed, and it was being suppressed by a Grotto Heaven realm youth. Qingjie's temperament had always been tough. However, at this moment, he felt extremely humiliated and uncomfortable. If he was defeated in this barren lower bound and the news spread back to his sect, he would definitely become a laughing stock. Crack! It didn't take long for Lin Sun to cut off Green Insect's spiritual sword with his broken blade, making a sharp sound. At the same time, Lin Sun stepped out and pressed his palm down. A swan ni seal condensed and released infinite light, which rumbled on Qingjie. Bang! Qingjie was sent flying. His chest caved in and blood gushed out. There was an uproar in the field. Qingjie was suppressed, which made the practitioners of the Empire feel that they were dreaming. But at the same time, Lin Sun's strong combat strength also made the practitioners of the Empire excited and surprised. Indeed, who could imagine that a Grotto Heaven realm youth could suppress an inherited disciple from the Heavenly Master Swordsmanship sect to such an extent? This inherited disciple once swept away a group of bigwigs in the wheel-developing realm within 3 moves. In such a contrast, Lin Sun's incredible strength was even more apparent. How dare the successor of the Heavenly Master Swordsmanship sect show off in our empire? Look, he was suppressed by Child Lin. This is the result of looking down on people in the world. Cool, it's really cool. Child Lin deserves to be the leader of the younger generation in the empire. How can his reputation be undeserved? Hearing that Qingjie was unscrupulously criticized, Gu Dongting in the distance became gloomy and emitted an overwhelming aura. He even couldn't help but want to take action several times. Qingjie was in such a disadvantageous position, which made him lose face. However, Gu Dongting soon became alert. He perceived that there was an extremely terrible power pervading this world. As long as he dared to make a move, there would be a peerless duel between the kings. It's him. Gu Dongting locked on his opponent in an instant. It was Zhao Tailai. This made his eyes surge, but he finally restrained himself. After all, this empire was not the territory of the Heavenly Master Swordsmanship sect. Although Gu Dongting was conceited, he knew that he would encounter many obstacles if he acted recklessly. At this time, Qingjie was completely suppressed in the battlefield. Like a scarecrow caught in a storm, he suffered many injuries. He was bleeding all over, his hair was disheveled, and his bones were broken in many places. "Master!" Qingjie's servant, Chen Feng, shouted anxiously with a gloomy face. This servant used to be very conceited and regarded the practitioners of the empire as nothing. But now he was scared out of his wits and panicked, which made some practitioners of the empire laugh at him. Bang! Not long after, Qing Zhe was suppressed. His body crashed to the ground, making a big pit. His face was covered with dust and his hair was disheveled. He looked miserable. His eyes were about to pop out. He couldn't accept this result. He stood up with a roar. But in an instant, his body was stiff, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Because a transparent broken blade like white ice and snow was already at his throat. As long as he dared to move a little, his neck would be cut off. Defeated, Qing Zhe felt like the sky was falling down. His face was gloomy, twisted and ferocious. He was so angry that he almost spat blood. Didn't you say that child Lin was weak? Why are you defeated? The practitioners of the empire laughed at him. This made Qing Zhe extremely angry and ashamed. His face was burning. He was the successor of the Heavenly Master Swordsmanship sect, the outstanding talent of the generation. He was extremely confident and conceited. After he came to the mortal world, he didn't put any peers in his eyes. But now, he was suppressed and defeated under the eyes of thousands of people. This blow was so heavy that Qing Zhe couldn't accept it for a while. According to the previous agreement, I will let you go immediately if you answer my 2 questions truthfully. Lin Sun landed on the ground and stared at Qing Zhe with his deep black eyes. To be honest, if Qing Zhe hadn't used the method of spirit attack in the previous battle, Lin Sun couldn't have suppressed him so quickly. After all, Qing Zhe was really powerful. He was definitely the most powerful talent that Lin Sun had ever met. However, it didn't make much sense to talk about this now. In everyone's eyes, the process was not important. What mattered was only the result. This was the reality. Qing Zhe was not prepared to be a loser at all. So when he heard Lin Sun's words, he felt more upset and resentful in his heart. Lin Sun didn't care about his mood and asked directly, "Tell me, did Yun Qingbai ask you to take the initiative to challenge me?" Qing Zhe's pupils shrank and his expression changed. Just as he was about to say something, Lin Sun said, "No need to answer. I already know the answer. Second question, did Yun Qingbai ask you to kill me in this duel?" This time, Qing Zhe answered straightforwardly and snorted, "Who do you think you are? Do you deserve senior brother Yun's attention?" "No." Lin Sun frowned. "Senior brother Yun is upright and upright. If he wants to kill you, he doesn't need to use my hands," Qing Zhe said coldly. Lin Sun stared at Qing Zhe for a while, and finally determined that this guy should not be lying. But he was a little puzzled. Since Yun Qingbai asked Qing Zhe to challenge him, why didn't he give an order to kill him? Could it be that Yun Qingbai had other motives? "Go away." Lin Sun turned around and left, ignoring Qing Zhe. He was just a poor guy who worked for Yun Qingbai. His attitude of disregard was like a sharp blade deeply inserted into Qing Zhe's heart, making him feel an unprecedented sense of shame and anger. "Lin Sun!" Qing Zhe roared like a beast. "Sooner or later, I will settle this account with you." Lin Sun still ignored him. It was just a loser's unreconciled words of revenge. At this moment, it was undoubtedly ridiculous and had no deterrent effect. Qing Zhe was trembling with anger. He was an inherited disciple of the Heavenly Master Swordsmanship sect. With the power of 3 moves, he suppressed a group of bigwigs in the reincarnation developing realm. But now, after being defeated by a young man in the Tao Insight realm, he was directly ignored. This shame almost drove Qing Zhe crazy. "Let's go." In the distance, Gu Dongting couldn't stand it anymore. He flew to the field and took Qing Zhe away. This battle had attracted a lot of attention. Qing Zhe had been ridiculed in this battle. If he continued to make trouble, he would lose a lot of face. Even Gu Dongting felt disgraced at this moment and didn't want to stay a moment longer. "Awesome! Haha!" In the field, there was a burst of earth-shaking cheers and laughter. They felt very happy. Even the powerful Qing Zhe was suppressed by Lin Sun, which made the practitioners of the empire feel proud and excited. This was Lin Sun, the young talent who covered the whole capital. The bigwigs of the Zhua clan and the Qin clan were completely dumbfounded. How could they have thought that the final result would be like this? At this time, Lin Sun had returned to Heart-Cleansing Peak and was surrounded by a group of senior members of the Lin clan. Outside Heart-Cleansing Peak, there was still a lot of noise and excitement. The practitioners of the Empire couldn't restrain their excitement and talked eagerly. Qingzhou is really naive. If he knows that Lin Sun has killed several half-step kings in half a year in the bloodthirsty battlefield, I don't know whether he will regret today's duel. Some bigwigs from the Imperial clan were gloating. This result was within their expectation. This battle is destined to cause a sensation in the Forbidden City and make the world tremble. After this battle, only the real top figures in the ancient wilderness can compete with Lin Sun. Many bigwigs made such a prediction. Chapter 762. When are you going to the ancient wilderness? On the top of Heart-Cleansing Peak, Zhao Tailai followed Lin Sun as soon as he returned. Lin Sun was stunned. Why do you suddenly ask this question? Zhao Tailai said, the signs of the catastrophe of the Great Way have begun to appear. The passage from the Empire to the ancient wilderness has begun to become unstable. If you want to take action, try to hurry up. According to the old priest on the observatory, there will be a great change in the so-called lower world in half a year at most. At that time, it will be too late to leave. Lin Sun was shocked. So, even if I can leave safely, it's impossible for me to come back in the future? Zhao Tailai smiled. Who can tell what will happen in the future? Even the sages can't completely deduce the changes of the catastrophe of the Great Way. No one dares to say anything about what will happen in the future. I'll pay attention to it, Lin Sun pondered. He originally planned to hone all his strength to the perfect level in the bloodthirsty battlefield, but things didn't go as he wished. Up to now, he still had some shortcomings. For example, he hadn't completely mastered the last 3 changes of the 9 changes of Calamity Dragon. For example, he was still at the perfect level of Taoist connotation in the realm of the Great Way. It still took some effort to break through the realm of Taoist connotation. Moreover, the comprehension of the Great Way required opportunities and comprehension, which couldn't be mastered by hard work. When you decide when to leave, I will take you to see the Emperor. He will see you off in person. As soon as Zhao Tailai's words came out, Lin Sun was shocked. He realized that Zhao Tailai must have been entrusted by the Emperor behind the scenes. Okay. Lin Sun nodded and agreed. Before long, Zhao Tailai left in a hurry. This old fox was always in a hurry, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. Lin Sun had long been used to it. At this moment, he was standing on the top of Heart-Cleansing Peak with his hands on his back, looking at the sea of clouds in the distance. The mountain breeze blew, making his clothes and long hair flutter. Lin Sun had just experienced a great battle, so he didn't have any feelings about it. He just thought of some past events. It was on this Heart-Cleansing Peak that Yunqi Bai killed a group of direct descendants of Lin family. Today, a disciple from the Heavenly Sword sect had a duel with him at the behest of Yunqi Bai. Without a doubt, Yunqi Bai already knew of his existence. Lin Sun was not worried about anything. Zhao Tailai had already promised that even if Yunqi Bai came to Xiao Empire again, he would never let the bloody thing happen again. What puzzled Lin Sun was that since Qing Zhi didn't intend to kill him in the duel, what did Yunqi Bai want to do? Perhaps when I enter the ancient desolation region and personally understand this enemy that I've never met, I might be able to find out the answer, Lin Sun murmured. The setting sun dyed the sea of clouds red. The mountain wind brought with it a thick humid air, bringing with it a bone-piercing chill. Lin Sun stood there silently for a long time and finally turned away. He had already made up his mind to start preparing for his trip to the ancient desolation realm. Empire, Qingyuan Palace. This was the resting place that the imperial family had specially arranged for the Heavenly Master Sword sect. Elder, I can conclude that there must be some kind of change in this boy that is comparable to defying the natural order and changing fate. Otherwise, a baby who should have died back then couldn't have achieved what he has today. In the room, Qing's expression was cold, and there was a haze between his eyebrows. His words were resolute, but there was resentment and unwillingness in them. Is this the thing that Qingbai asked you to test? Beside him, Gu Dongting was thoughtful. Qingzhe nodded, but his expression was still gloomy. Today, he was suppressed by Lin Sun in front of thousands of people. Thinking of it now, he was still mad with hatred. Defying the natural order and changing fate? Gu Dongting frowned, seemingly puzzled. A baby who has lost its spiritual vein is destined to die prematurely. Even if there are miraculous elixirs in this world that can save it, it will only become a cripple. It will never be able to embark on the path of cultivation again. And this child, how did he do it? Qingzhe snorted. Elder, do you think I'm lying? You saw the previous battle. This kid was able to defeat me with his Grotto Heaven stage cultivation. I'm afraid there aren't many people in the ancient Desolation region who can achieve this. Admitting that the opponent was too weak undoubtedly proved that he was more weak. Qingzhe didn't want Gu Dongting to have other ideas. You misunderstood me. Gu Dongting shook his head, and divine light surged in his eyes. If this boy is really the baby, then, as you have guessed, there must be some kind of change in this boy that can defy the natural order and change fate. Speaking of this, he hesitated for a moment and said, I even suspect that he has regenerated a new spiritual vein. Clang! Qingzhe's hand trembled, and the teacup that he had just raised fell to the ground, but he seemed to be unaware of it. His eyes burst out with a terrible cyan luster, and he said, It must be so. The devouring abyss is the most mysterious talent in ancient times. Senior Brother Yun has embarked on the complete Jew's Tao with this talent. After a pause, he took a deep breath and said, And now this boy has also embarked on the Jew's Tao. This is definitely not a coincidence. Obviously, Gu Dongting had also guessed this point, and his expression became subtle. What Yun Qinbai did in the Xiao Empire was somewhat disgraceful, and very few people in the Heavenly Master Sword sect knew about it. But this didn't include Gu Dongting and Qingzhe. Conversely, both of them were clearly aware that Yun Qingbai's current accomplishments in the ancient Desolation region were closely related to the quintessence spirit vein he'd obtained all those years ago. It was true that Yun Qingbei was an extremely talented cultivator with an extremely good foundation. He could be said to be a natural-born genius. However, if not for that piece of origin spirit vein, it would have been impossible for him to step onto the strongest path that others yearned for even in their dreams so quickly. Elder, I have a presumptuous request. Suddenly, Qingzhe stood up and knelt down in front of Gu Dongting. Gu Dongting narrowed his eyes and seemed to have guessed something. You don't want to. Qingzhe's eyes were full of firmness and longing. Elder, it won't take many years before the World War comes. At that time, all the talents in the world will rise together, and all the heroes will compete for the great fortune of becoming a saint or ancestor. It will definitely be an unprecedented age. I don't want to be left behind. Gu Dongting was silent for a moment and said, I'm afraid I can't help you with this matter. In the Xiao Empire, even if I want to help, I can't. Qingzhe hurriedly said, Of course, now is not the right time. But as far as I know, Lin Sun will go to the ancient wilderness sooner or later. At that time, I will have a lot of opportunities to do this. Gu Dongting still shook his head. I'm afraid this is not the right thing to do. Do you know how much Qinbai paid to integrate with that spiritual vein of origin? What's more, Lin Sun has grown up now. Even if you get him, I'm afraid it's very difficult to seize his talent and make it your own. Qingzhe still looked firm and said, Elder, you don't need to worry about this. It's enough as long as you promise me one thing. What is it? Taking a deep breath, Qingzhe gritted his teeth and said, Hide the news about Lin Sun, Especially don't mention it to senior fellow apprentice Yun. Gu Dongting was silent at once. The atmosphere in the room also froze for a moment. Elder, we Green Crane Branch will never forget your great kindness this time, and we will repay you greatly in the future. Qingzhe suddenly said, I heard that you are about to face the test of 9 tribulations of longevity. If you don't mind, you can go to the dwelling place of Green Crane Branch to undergo the tribulation. I believe that if my father knows this, he will be willing to lend the holy land of Green Crane Branch to you. Gu Dongting's eyes flickered imperceptibly and finally sighed softly. Well, considering your firm heart to pursue Taoism, I promise you this time that it won't happen again. Qingzhe immediately kowtowed and said, Thank you for your kindness, Elder. When are you going to do it? Gu Dongting couldn't help but ask. Don't worry, at least wait until he arrives at the ancient wilderness. Qingzhe smiled slightly, and his eyes were full of confidence. In the ancient wilderness, with the power of Green Crane Branch, it was easy to deal with a real king, let alone Lin Sun. Gu Dongting suddenly said, Oh, there should be a magic weapon in his hand. Alas, if I had such a treasure years ago, I'm afraid I would have embarked on the road of 9 tribulations of longevity. Qingzhe immediately understood and said, Elder, you don't have to regret. When I capture him, I will give you the magic weapon. Gu Dongting suddenly laughed and helped Qingzhe up, who was kneeling on the ground. I'm very happy that you have such thoughts. Qingzhe also laughed, but he felt a little heartache in his heart. He secretly cursed Gu Dongting for being too greedy. He not only wanted to borrow the treasure of Green Crane Clan to pass the tribulation, but also wanted to swallow the magic weapon. But soon, Qingzhe didn't care about this. If he could embark on the same road as Yun Qinbai, what was the cost? Lin Sun, don't die. I will wait for you in the ancient wilderness. Qingzhe murmured in his heart. But Qingzhe didn't know that his concealment helped Lin Sun to avoid a fatal disaster by accident. Qingzhe, the successor of Heavenly Master Swordsmanship sect, was defeated by Lin Sun. Today, the Forbidden City was in a great sensation because of this news. There was an uproar everywhere, and the atmosphere was extremely noisy. After half a year of silence, Lin Sun once again amazed the world, which shocked all the forces in the Forbidden City and made them completely unable to sit still. Some forces who had old grudges with Lin family were worried about this and felt very uneasy. Lin Sun grew up too fast and was too horrible. He was no longer the weak young man he used to be. Now, he had great deterrent and threatening power. Some forces who made friends with Lin family secretly rejoiced that they had made the right choice. As long as Lin Sun went further on the road of Taoism in the future, it would bring many benefits to these forces imperceptibly. On the same night, the deeds of Lin Sun in the bloodthirsty battlefield under the name of Lin 12 spread rapidly in the night. Chapter 763. The Forbidden City was brightly lit at night. Qin family. It was rare for the big shots of Qin family and Zhou family to gather together. However, compared with the noisy and lively atmosphere outside, the atmosphere in this hall was very depressed. These big shots' faces were gloomy, which made the air stagnant. Damn it! Even the successor of heaven-reaching sword sect can't suppress him. Who in the Empire can do anything to him in the future? A big shot gnashed his teeth with resentment. It can be foreseen that with the protection of the big shots of the Empire and the favor of the current Emperor and the bloodthirsty King, if there is any trouble in heart-cleansing Peak, even if it is not done by our 2 families, they will definitely suspect us. Some people expressed pessimism and sighed. All the big shots of Qin family and Zhou family knew very well that they had done some unfavorable things to Lin family of heart-cleansing Peak more than 10 years ago. However, they didn't expect that Lin family, which had been declining for a long time, suddenly had a new vitality because of Lin Sun. In just a few years, Lin family of heart-cleansing Peak had changed its appearance and risen strongly. In terms of momentum, some middle-level forces were overshadowed. Especially today, when Lin Sun defeated Qing Zhe, the big shots of Qin family and Zhou family realized a serious problem. There was almost no hope to contain and suppress Lin family in the future. Lin Sun. A big shot gnashed his teeth with hatred. He was just a young man, but he supported Lin family alone in just a few years. The more he did this, the more threatening and hateful he was. Don't panic. Our two families can stand to this day, which is not something a young man can challenge. On the main seat, the leader of Qin family took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Although we can't do anything to him for the time being, he can't do anything to us either." After a pause, he continued, "I'm sure all of you are aware that this kid has become an enemy of the Heavenly Sword sect since he was born. It can be foreseen that he will definitely enter the ancient desolation territory in the future to avenge his parents. At that time, there's no need for us to worry at all. Just the Heavenly Sword sect alone will be enough to make it difficult for this kid to even take a step forward, and he might even die." This analysis was very practical, and it obtained the agreement of many great figures present here, causing them to feel much more at ease. Indeed, no matter how powerful Lin Sun was, he couldn't shake the two top aristocratic families at all with his current strength. In addition, he had many enemies. As long as he entered the ancient desolation territory, he was bound to be suppressed by Heaven-reaching Sword sect. Heaven-reaching Sword sect was an ancient orthodoxy that had been standing since ancient times. Its foundation was so strong that it was almost unimaginable. It was easy for them to kill a young man. I suddenly recalled that he once killed the successor of the Lingbao Holy Land in the depths of the Soul Oblivion Sea. That's why he became the Lingbao Holy Land's enemy. Suddenly, someone said, "The foundation and power of the numinous treasure Holy Land is no less than the Heavenly Sword sect." I also remember that half a year ago, a master of the Heavens Pivot Holy Land visited Green Deer School, and Lin Sun acted violently at that time and injured several successors of the Heavens Pivot Holy Land. All of a sudden, some big shots began to analyze the forces Lin Sun had made in the past. The more they talked, the more excited and relaxed they became. The resentment accumulated in their hearts was also swept away. In the end, they came to a conclusion that Lin Sun had made too many enemies. There would be plenty of people to deal with him in the future. In Xiao Empire, Lin Sun and Lin family of Heart-Cleansing Peak couldn't shake the Zhou and Qin families at all. This also meant that Lin Sun's threat, at least for now, was nothing at all. Haha. I truly wish for nothing more than for this kid to leave the empire and head to the ancient desolation region. There are sects in great numbers there, a myriad of clans coexisting there, and the experts there are numerous like carps in a river. It's a vast and magnificent place. With that kid's ability and having offended so many ancient sects, he probably wouldn't even know how he died. I'm looking forward to it as well. This kid has been running amok since the beginning. He's extremely daring and has caused so much trouble. He's definitely a restless person. If he goes to the ancient desolation domain, who knows how many people he'll offend. The atmosphere in the hall became more relaxed. They were all gloating. Report. Suddenly, a servant of Zhou family rushed in from outside the hall. Sweating profusely, he reported in a panic, "Patriarch, I just got the news that Lin Sun has been silent for half a year. It turns out that he went to the bloodthirsty battlefield to kill people." All the great figures in the surroundings were stunned and bewildered. What's there to make a fuss about? Be specific. The patriarch of Qin family said in a deep voice. The servant wiped his sweat and said quickly, "Just now, it said in the Forbidden City that Lin Sun killed several half-step king beings in the bloodthirsty battlefield alone." The servant began to describe Lin Sun's brilliant achievements in the bloodthirsty battlefield. During this entire process, the expressions of the great figures of the Zhou and Qin clans had become gloomy once more, and the relaxed and delighted expressions they'd obtained with great difficulty had vanished without a trace. Especially according to the news, It's Lin Sun's great contribution that the soldiers in the bloodthirsty battlefield could hold on until the passage to the Empire was opened. When the servant said this, the atmosphere in the hall was dead silent. It was so oppressive that people could not breathe. How could they expect that Lin Sun made such a big noise in the bloodthirsty battlefield, which was famous for its dangerous and bloody, during the half a year of silence? He killed half-step king beings with a bow. He galloped on the battlefield with his own strength and deterred the enemies. He got so many military merits that he ranked third on the military merit list. His name was even written in the third place on the bloodthirsty wanted list. The most incredible thing was that bloodthirsty Queen Zhao Xingye forced the voodoo barbarian camp to stop the war with a pair of bows and arrows in Lin Sun's hands. This string of brilliant achievements and deeds were simply like numerous thunderbolts that caused the great figures of the Zhua and Qin clans to feel as if it was unreal, and they were completely stunned on the spot. On the other hand, the expression of the attendant that reported the news was tense since a long time ago, and his entire body was drenched in sweat while he shivered. The atmosphere in the hall was too deathly silent and oppressive, and it caused him to feel as if he was on the verge of suffocation. This allowed him to acutely realize that the news he reported had greatly shocked all these great figures present here. At this moment, their feelings must be extremely bad. This boy is really a monster. After a long time, the patriarch of Qin family sighed with mixed emotions, and it was hard to tell whether it was admiration or disgust. After that, he took a deep breath and said, "Everyone, there's no need to worry. He will leave the Empire in the end and head to the ancient desolation domain. The more heaven-defying he is, the more dangerous the trials and setbacks he will suffer, and he might die at any moment." All the big shots nodded silently. At this moment, they could only comfort him in this way. Boom! But right at this moment, another unexpected event occurred. An enormous bang that shook the heavens suddenly resounded from outside the hall. Someone dares to break into the gate of Qin family. The patriarch of Qin family stood up immediately with his beard fluttering. Because of Lin Sun today, his mood was extremely bad. But now, there was a sudden change in front of the gate of Qin family. It seemed that someone was going to break in. How could he not be angry? I'd like to see who is so daring. For so many years, as the two top forces, we have never had such a thing happen. But now there are twists and turns. Do you really think that we are easy to bully? All the big shots present were also annoyed. Like the patriarch of Qin family, they had long been angry because of Lin Sun. At this moment they completely exploded. They needed to vent, otherwise they would be suffocated. Patriarch, something bad has happened. Outside the hall, some attendants ran in a panic with a sad face, as if the sky had fallen. A bunch of trash. Why are you so panicky? What a scandal! The patriarch of Qin family was so angry that he wanted to kick these bastards to death. They were too impatient and shameful. If it was spread out, they would be laughed at by the whole empire. However, the next moment, his face changed greatly as if he had been struck by lightning. He cried out involuntarily, How could it be you?" At this moment, he was no better than those panicky attendants, which showed how out of control he was at this moment. Not only him, but also all the big shots in the hall at this moment looked incredible. They stared at the outside of the hall in surprise and doubt. Outside the hall, there stood a graceful and slender figure in a black crane cloak with a long black bun. Her eyes were bright, her red lips were moist, and her teeth were sparkling. She was so charming that she could topple a city. Standing there was a kind of peerless elegance. Zhao Xingye, the only female general of the empire, with the title of Bloodthirsty Queen, was absolutely a terrifying figure among the kings. She fought in the bloodthirsty battlefield all year round. Even if she rarely appeared in the empire, the rumors about her never disappeared. Especially these big shots present, they all knew very well that Zhao Xingye had another identity, That was the sister of the current emperor. Such a beautiful woman with a terrifying cultivation, abnormal strength, and a lofty status had stepped forcefully into the Qin clan's mountain gate in the middle of the night. Why had she come? Lin Sun? Soon, some big shots exclaimed, and their eyeballs almost fell out. They saw a handsome young man standing not far behind Zhao Xingye. It was Lin Sun. All of a sudden, all the big shots in the hall were restless, and they looked as if they had seen a ghost. Who would have thought that the young man they hated most would appear in front of them like this? Why did he come here? Did he want to take revenge by using Zhao Xingye's power? Coincidentally, the same thought appeared in the minds of these big shots of Zhuo and Qin family, and their faces became gloomy. They had found various reasons to comfort themselves that as long as Lin Sun entered the ancient desolation territory, he would no longer be a threat to them. But who would have thought that in the blink of an eye, the young man who gave them headaches and fear came to them like this? This was simply a joke of fate. Chapter 764. In the bloodthirsty battlefield, Zhao Xingye had promised Lin Sun that he would take Lin Sun with him when he went to the Qin family to demand an explanation. Tonight, Zhao Xingye and Lin Sun came together. But it was obvious from the astonished reactions of the big shots of the Qin family that Qin Chu, the king of life and death, didn't tell them what he had promised in the bloodthirsty battlefield. However, it didn't matter. Lin Sun came here to see how Zhao Xingye would slaughter the Qin family. He didn't need to worry about other things. An hour later, Lin Sun left the Qin family with Zhao Xingye with a satisfied smile on his face. Behind them, there were bursts of angry roars mixed with the sound of broken teacups, which could be heard from far away. Lin Sun couldn't help laughing again. Just in the previous negotiation, when the big shots of the Qin family heard that Qin Chu wanted to contribute all the wealth and strength of the Qin family to the empire, they were so angry that they almost went crazy. But in front of Zhao Xingye, they didn't dare to act rashly. Although they were extremely angry, they could only bear it. Lin Sun couldn't help laughing at the thought of their gloomy and sullen faces. In the end, under Zhao Xingye's rude and unreasonable attitude, the Qin family had to pay a heavy price for it. In addition to tens of millions of gold coins and 100,000 high-rank spiritual crystals, Qin family promised to dispatch an elite army of tens of thousands of people to the bloodthirsty battlefield to fight for the empire. The price was too high. Even if the Qin family was an upper-class aristocratic force, it was no different from cutting off a piece of flesh from its body. "Little guy, are you satisfied?" Zhao Xingye asked with a faint smile. His red lips were full, his teeth were sparkling, and his eyes were big and charming. Alas, Qin Chu failed to fulfill his promise after all. Lin Sun sighed. Zhao Xingye rolled his eyes at him and said, "You should be content. After all, the Qin family is an upper-class aristocratic force. Even I can't go too far. If you want the Qin family to contribute all their wealth and strength, unless what? Unless you have the power of the King realm." This, Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and said after a while, "It seems that I can only solve this problem by myself. Then I'll wait for your good news." Zhao Xingye didn't think much of it. With the power of the King realm, Lin Sun should at least embark on the road to pass the test and live a long life. With his current cultivation, Lin Sun was still far from this goal. According to her speculation, it would take at least 100 years for Lin to achieve this goal, even if there were no risks or obstacles on the road of cultivation. Lin Sun smiled and said no more. Indeed, it was a little early to say these things, but if he really had the power to overthrow the Zhuo and Qin families in the future, he would never be polite to them. Heart-cleansing peak. After defeating Qingzhe and extorting a large sum of compensation from Qin family with Zhao Xingye, Lin Sun lived in seclusion and rarely showed up in public. He was preparing to go to the ancient desolation domain. Wordless pagoda, broken blade, insignificant spiritual bow, blue sky arrow. These treasures must be carried with me. Lin Sun was counting the treasures he had collected over the years. He was shocked when he counted them. He didn't expect that he had accumulated so many treasures over the years. Chapter 765. I'm going to leave now. On the bustling streets of the Forbidden City, Lin Sun walked side by side with Gu Liang, with his hands behind his back. The streets were bustling with traffic and people. It was as prosperous and beautiful as before. This was the capital of the empire, the place that all the practitioners in the world yearned for the most. Every day, countless young men and women would travel thousands of miles to come here, either for fame or for profit. All of them longed to have a place to stand in this huge city. It was not easy to live in the capital. Lin Sun had a deep understanding of this. However, right now, his name had already shaken the world, and he was the most outstanding of the younger generation. Now that he was about to leave, he still felt a bit reluctant to part with this city. I've heard that you are going to the ancient desolation territory for cultivation, but Gu Liang hesitated for a moment and then asked, will you come back? Lin Sun was stunned. Of course, my home is here after all. Gu Liang smiled as he stared into the distance and said, that's hard to say. The outside world is extremely vast, to the point that it's unimaginably vast. It's bizarre and dazzling, magnificent and colorful. Once you step onto this path, who can be sure that you'll be able to return in your lifetime? Immediately, he patted Lin Sun on the shoulder and said with a smile, but I'm glad you leave. In my heart, the empire is just a small pool for you. It can't stand your toss. What you need is a bigger stage and a wider world to realize your ambitions and go further on the road of Tao. Lin Sun was speechless. They wandered and chatted with each other. Unconsciously, they came to the place where the observatory was located. The observatory, 9,000 feet high, was majestic and towering, going straight into the sky. It's said that you can overlook most of the Forbidden City from the top of the observatory. It's a place to deduce astronomical phenomena and predict the fate of the empire. Gu Liang looked up and said, especially the old priest on the observatory, who has unfathomable means. It's said that there is almost nothing in the world that he doesn't know. He is as wise as the sea and prophetic. The old priest, a trace of surprise flashed in Lin Sun's eyes. He had heard long ago that the old priest lived in seclusion on the observatory all year round. He was definitely the most legendary and mysterious figure in the empire. Whether it was the royal family of the empire or the cultivators of the world, they all respected him as if he was a ghost or a god. Before you leave, it would be even better if the old priest could divine for you and ask if you're going to be lucky or not. Want? Gu Liang sighed. Unfortunately, I heard that this old priest has been indifferent to the affairs of the world for many years, so I'm afraid he'll be unable to fulfill your wish. Divination? Lin Sun smiled. He never believed in this kind of thing. As the saying goes, destiny is filled with variables and is intertwined with cause and effect. How could it be something that can be easily deduced? Let's go. Lin Sun turned around and was about to leave. But at this moment, from a door at the bottom of the observatory, a boy in green came out and saluted to Lin Sun. Child Lin, please wait a moment. The priest asked you to come up and have some tea. Lin Sun was stunned and couldn't help but look up at the observatory towering in the clouds with a strange look. Gu Liang was overjoyed. He elbowed Lin Sun and said, the old priest invited you. Hurry up. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You must remember to let him do a divination for you. Lin Sun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After thinking about it, he finally nodded and agreed. He was also curious about what the old priest, whom he had never met, wanted to do with him when he was about to leave. When Lin Sun followed the boy in green up the steps and reached the top of the observatory, he seemed to come into the clouds. Looking down from the railing, most of the Forbidden City came into view. In the distance, rows of buildings spread out like a spider web. On the streets, pedestrians were like ants and carriages and horses were like boxes, which seemed very small. In an instant, Lin Sun had a magnificent feeling of ascending to a high place and looking into the distance. Under his feet was the secular world. The prosperous smoke and clouds were rolling like waves. Lin Sun was already in the clouds, as if he was detached from the mortal world. What a good place! Lin Sun sighed with emotion. Here, you can see all kinds of living beings and the loftiness of the world. Only in this way can you know that all living beings are suffering and the world is ruthless. An old and deep voice sounded beside him. Lin Sun turned his head and saw an old man in a gray robe with gray hair and beard and wrinkles on his face. He looked very old, sitting in front of a desk. The old man had the breath of time, giving people a feeling of vicissitude. But his eyes were clear and clean like a baby's, which seemed to reflect the deepest secrets in people's hearts. "Greetings, Senior." Lin Sun saluted. He was actually a little shocked. The old man's breath was very plain, but there was a sense of vastness like the great void. He was more unfathomable than any king Lin Sun had ever seen. "Sit down." The old priest picked up the teapot on the desk and made a cup of tea for Lin Sun. His movements were slow, but there was a kind of calming power. Lin Sun didn't stand on ceremony. He sat cross-legged on the opposite side of the desk and sipped the tea. The tea had a unique bitter taste, which made Lin Sun slightly uncomfortable. But soon he found that there was a faint mellow flavor behind the bitterness, which made him feel relaxed and happy. The old priest looked at Lin Sun with his baby-like eyes and said, "Since I lived in the Star Observatory, I have seen many young talents in the past thousands of years. But you are the only one I can't see through. I have to say that Lu Boya really taught a good apprentice." Lin Sun was slightly shocked. "Senior, do you know Master Lu?" The old priest nodded. "I've met him once. The paths I take are different from his, so we didn't talk much. But in my heart I really admire Lu Boya. Unfortunately, the path he takes is too dangerous, and he intends to defy the heavens and change his fate. In the end, he brought enormous trouble upon himself. To go against the heaven and change his fate." Lin Sun's mood suddenly became a little complicated. He thought of the heaven accessing place given by Master Lu and the big hand that destroyed Master Lu and the mine prison before leaving. "Senior," when Lin Sun was about to say something, the old priest shook his head slightly and said, "I don't know whether Lu Boya is alive or not." Just when Lin Sun was disappointed, the old priest changed the topic and said, "However, I can roughly speculate that the murderer who destroyed his dwelling place should come from the ancient Desolation territory." Speaking of this, the old priest's clear eyes became deep and his voice became a little faint. In the ancient Desolation territory, the person or force who dares to do this must at least have a sacred background. Immediately he shook his head. "It's hard to say. Lu Boya suffered a disaster because he went against the heaven and changed his fate. The disaster was so great that it was really difficult to speculate. But it's certain that Master Lu's disaster has something to do with the change of fate." Lin Sun said after a moment of silence. There was one more thing he didn't say. He even suspected that Lu Boya's disaster had something to do with the heaven accessing place he owned. After all, it was the existence of the heaven accessing place that made him reborn, which was no less than a real change of fate. Master Lu blocked a disaster for me. At the thought of this, Lin Sun's heart trembled with unspeakable gratitude and indignation. Where did the big hand that destroyed Master Lu come from? Your guess is correct. Once you step onto the path of overcoming the tribulation to attain immortality, you'll understand how terrifying a path of the Tao is to go against the heavens and change one's fate. Perhaps only by understanding this would you be able to find the exact reason why Lu Boya suffered calamity all those years ago. The old priest's words were undoubtedly equivalent to pointing out a way for Lin Sun. Lin Sun immediately got up and bowed. "Thank you for your guidance, Senior. Let's go. The Empire is too small for you after all. Whether for revenge or to find the way, the ancient Desolation territory is the place you should go." The old priest picked up a cup of tea and looked into the distance. The mountains and rivers there were picturesque, and the world seemed boundless. Lin Sun immediately said goodbye and left in silence. Bang! Soon after Lin Sun left, he saw the old priest's hand tremble. The teacup he held fell and the tea spilled all over the table. The old priest's face, which was already old to begin with, grew even older. There was an additional aura of decay about him. However, he seemed to be unaware of it at the moment. He stared into the distance, as if he had a lot on his mind, and his expression was uncertain. How is it? Suddenly, a figure appeared out of thin air. He was thin, with wide sleeves and a wide belt. There was a kind of indescribable majesty in his posture. Standing there casually, he was like a mountain that could shelter the world from the wind and rain. If Lin Sun was here, he would definitely recognize that this person was the dean of Green Deer School. If nothing goes wrong, Lu Boya has already planted a seed and found a glimmer of hope on the path, he pursued. The old priest murmured, with wrinkles on his face. His expression was extremely complicated. The dean's eyes suddenly became abnormally bright, like a pair of burning torches, which seemed to be able to see through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The signs of the catastrophe of the Tao have begun to come. It's better to see a glimmer of hope than no hope at all. But the road ahead of him, the old priest sighed softly. At this time, he spread out the palm of his left hand that had been in his sleeve. There was an old tortoiseshell there, but it had broken into several pieces at the moment. What's wrong? The dean's eyes narrowed. It's like a vast fog that can't be seen. The old priest said word by word, and a terrible divine light flashed in his clear eyes. The dean frowned and kept silent for a long time. Then he relaxed his eyebrows, and his eyes were like lightning, disdainfully and frighteningly. He said, "This is called a variable. When you are poor, you will change, and when you change, you will find a way." I hope so. The old priest silently put away the broken tortoiseshell in his palm. He didn't tell the dean that when he secretly deduced the future for Lin Sun, he saw a shocking scene. In front of him was a vast fog that couldn't be seen. Chapter 766. Lin Sun was leaving. In recent days, the news spread in the Forbidden City and became the hottest topic that all the major forces and practitioners paid most attention to. Alas, I have long known that a young talent like Child Lin is destined not to stay in the Empire for a long time. Child is unparalleled in the world. If Child Lin leaves, I'm afraid that no one will be qualified to have this title anymore. The fish leaps into the sea and the flowers bloom on the other shore. I believe that even if Child Lin goes to the mysterious and vast ancient wilderness, he is destined to be famous. Many practitioners either sighed with regret or sent blessings to Lin. Most practitioners admired and respected Lin Sun. He was a young man from outside the southwest border, but he made great progress all the way, rose in the Forbidden City, and finally became a young talent that attracted the attention of the world. Who could compare with that kind of demeanor? There were countless legends about Lin Sun, which were still circulated in the market and talked about with great relish. How could a youth like this not make people exclaim in admiration or amazement? Now, he was about to leave the Empire and go to the ancient wilderness to seek for the Tao, which naturally made people a little reluctant. If such a young talent left, no one knew when he could come back. In the future, there would be one less legend in the Forbidden City. Ha! God has mercy on him. This ferocious guy is finally gone. If he doesn't leave, there will be a shadow in my heart. How can we shine in the young generation with him? Well done. I only hope that he won't come back in his life. Since he entered the Forbidden City, he has been like a devil, causing trouble and killing people everywhere. It's really a headache. Some forces and practitioners who had old grudges with Lin Sun were ecstatic when they heard that Lin Sun was about to leave. They even wanted to drink 3,000 times to vent their inner joy. Qi family, Zhou family and Qin family were all in a happy atmosphere these days, as if they were celebrating a festival. Lin Sun's presence made them almost sleepless and their hearts were almost shrouded with a shadow. Now Lin Sun was about to leave. How could they not be happy? This was simply like sending off a god of plague, causing these hostile forces to almost cry tears of joy. Setting off for the ancient desolation territory has caused such a great sensation and attention in the Forbidden City. I'm afraid only Lin Sun has such influence in the whole empire. Some outsiders like Lin Sun, who had neither hatred nor admiration for him, couldn't help sighing with emotion. Indeed, if it was an ordinary cultivator, not to mention leaving, even if he died, it would not attract anyone's attention. But Lin Sun was obviously different. Right now, he was famous all over the world and stood out in the empire. His every move affected the hearts of many practitioners. It was hard for him not to attract attention. Bang, bang, bang. Within a restaurant, there was a group of cultivators fighting with each other, and they'd smashed all the tables and chairs into pieces. It was a scene of chaos. F***ck, if you have the guts, do you dare to say another bad word about young Master Lin? F***ck, that Lin Sun is a little devil. Now that he's leaving, what's wrong with celebrating? Don't you allow others to speak? Obviously, one side admired Lin Sun, and the other side wanted Lin Sun to leave the Forbidden City as soon as possible. This was the reason for the fight, which was ridiculous. Lin Sun was drinking with Gu Liang. Seeing this, he couldn't help but get up and turn away. Haha, I didn't expect that your influence has been so great now. Walking out of the restaurant, Gu Liang couldn't help laughing. Lin Sun was also a little resentful. He had planned to leave quietly, but now it seemed that it was impossible. Carrying the flagon, they could only wander around and drink. But along the way there were constant disturbances. They frequently encountered practitioners who were either arguing or directly rolling up their sleeves and starting a fight, causing the restaurants, tea-houses, and brothels to be in constant conflict, and it seemed to be very lively. The reason was the same. They were all the competition between those who supported Lin Sun and those who didn't. Lin Sun couldn't help feeling a headache and lost the mood to drink. He even suspected that if he stayed for a few more days, the Forbidden City would be in a mess. Xiao Hua, don't look down on me. When I grow up, I want to be an indomitable man like child Lin Sun. On the way, a group of little kids were playing. A little kid with a runny nose was seriously saying to a little girl, "Now, as long as you promise to play with me, I will definitely let you be my woman when I become a peerless talent." The little girl, with her hair braided and dressed in flowery clothes, put her hands on her waist proudly, rolled her eyes and said, "Zhang Xiaofan, just give up. I heard that Lin Sun is still unmarried. When I grow up, I will definitely marry Lin Sun, and you. Wipe your snot first before you brag." Gu Liang's expression suddenly became strange. Even such a little kid regarded Lin Sun as a target to strive for? The younger generation would surpass the older. "Awesome, my brother. You have a minor confidant." Gu Liang looked playful and winked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun only replied with one word, "Get out." Then, he took the gourd and hurriedly fled from here. Those little kids' words carried no harm, and he was afraid of hearing some nonsense. When you enter the ancient desolation territory, make more friends, and you won't be as lonely as you are now. Looking at Lin Sun walking in the bustling crowd in the distance, Gu Liang sighed in his heart. In the world, there were countless people who knew Lin Sun's reputation. But so far, few people had really understood Lin Sun. He walked out of the innumerable mountains in the southwest border and traveled the world alone. His footprints passed through Donglin Town, Mist City, Bloodthirsty Camp, and the Forbidden City. He also went to the Soul Oblivion Sea and the Bloodthirsty Battlefield. But every time, he always went there alone. Everyone in the world was stunned by his reputation, but they only saw his glorious and radiant side. How many people knew the loneliness that was carved on his back? Loneliness. This was the impression Lin Sun left on Gu Liang. Sometimes, Gu Liang thought that it might be lonely at the top. Even as Lin Sun's friend, Gu Liang never knew what Lin Sun was thinking and how much unknown pressure he was carrying. In the distance, Lin Sun walked alone in a moon-white robe with a green gourd in his hand. He walked gracefully in the vast crowd with a green gourd in his hand. However, Gu Liang felt that Lin Sun, who was alone in the distance, was out of place in all the bustling and bustling. Was this cultivation? Perhaps what he pursued had long been beyond the world of mortals. Gu Liang shook his head and hurriedly caught up with him. Early in the morning 2 days later, the sun had just risen. It snowed heavily last night, and the whole forbidden city was covered in a white world. It was crystal clear and had a sense of holiness. When Lin Sun walked out of the gate of Heart-Cleansing Peak, Zhao Tailai had been waiting there. After saying hello, Lin Sun couldn't help but look at Heart-Cleansing Peak behind him. Finally, he turned around silently and strode into the chariot. The capital is full of snow. What a beautiful scenery! Zhao Tailai laughed heartily and drove the carriage into the snowstorm. Take care! In front of the gate of Heart-Cleansing Peak, a group of figures appeared. Lin Zhong, Vulture, Yang Ku, Zhu Laosan, Lin Huiyuan. They watched the chariot go away and finally disappeared in the vast snow and fog. After Lin Sun left, they didn't know when they would meet again. For these clansmen of Lin family, there were too many unwillingness and concerns. Chirp chirp, in Yang Ku's arms, Chiuchio's round eyes were filled with tears, and they fell down, turning into teardrops that looked like fiery diamonds. The little fellow seemed to know that he wouldn't see Lin Sun for a long time, so he cried very sadly. Crack! Yang Ku slapped Chirp's soft head. What are you crying for? It's not life and death. Don't be so pretentious. Everyone smiled at once, and the sadness of parting was diluted a lot. The land of ancient desolation is vast and ancient. It is vast and boundless. There are tens of thousands of clans and many clans. There are countless ancient orthodoxies that have existed since ancient times. There are even real sages that run rampant there. Vulture's voice was full of lofty sentiments. With Lin Sun's aptitude and foundation, he is destined to make a name for himself there and compete with all the talents in the world. Hearing this, everyone felt their blood surging. They looked forward to it leisurely and silently blessed Lin Sun in their hearts. In the imperial palace in the early morning, the imperial palace was covered with snow. It was quiet and solemn with a grand atmosphere. A chariot rolled into the imperial palace. From beginning to end, it didn't encounter any obstruction. Finally, it stopped in front of an ancient altar in the depths of the imperial palace. The altar was 9 meters high and made of 5-colored soil. The center of the altar was branded with the grid of 9 palaces, which connected to the sky and the earth. It had a kind of sacred and majestic atmosphere. When Lin Sun walked out of the chariot, Zhao Tailai patted him on the shoulder and said, "Goodbye. See you later." Lin Sun was speechless and almost rolled his eyes. This old fox was too perfunctory. Zhao Tailai had already driven the chariot away. At the same time, his laughter sounded in the wind. It's just a trip to the ancient desolation territory. It's not a big deal. It's not good to make it too sad. On the contrary, I can't wait to hear the good news about you harming the ancient desolation territory as soon as possible. Ha! Harming the ancient desolation territory. Lin Sun was speechless. Was he always a troublemaker in the eyes of this old fox? The pure white snow did not cover the mysterious and ancient altar in front of him. It was very special, with a unique ancient aura, as if there were traces of time and space on its surface, which made Lin feel dizzy as if time and space were disordered. You're here. Chapter 767. Lin Sun turned his head and saw a handsome man standing on one side without him noticing. The man was dressed in a clean and unadorned green robe and a pair of straw shoes. His black hair was casually tied behind his head, and his posture was as tall as a pine tree. His skin was sparkling and translucent like jade, and his facial features were sharp and chiseled as if they were carved by a knife. He was resolute and handsome. His eyes, in particular, were deep and tranquil, as calm as a lake, which seemed to reflect all things in the world, making people afraid to look at him. It was impossible to tell how old the man was just from his appearance, but Lin soon felt a sense of majesty coming from him. Lin soon felt like he was facing a dominator who controlled the universe. The invisible momentum made Lin soon tense all over. Lin soon didn't need to think at all to know that the man in green robe and straw shoes in front of him was the current emperor, the emperor of the empire. However, for such a supreme figure who stood at the peak of the world and wielded an important weapon of a country, no matter how ordinary and casual his attire was, the majestic aura in his bones could not be concealed at all. "Greetings, Senior." Lin soon cupped his hands. This was the etiquette between practitioners. He called the other Senior, instead of Your Majesty, to show the difference. The man smiled slightly. "No matter how important the power in the world is, it's just a fleeting cloud for a practitioner who has set foot on the Tao. It seems that you have seen through this point." His voice was gentle and plain, but there was a sense of majesty in it. As he said, he pointed to the ancient five-color altar in front of him and said, "Step on this altar, and you can enter the passage to the ancient desolation territory. But now is different from the past. The approaching disaster of the Tao makes the space tunnel unstable. You should be careful this time." Lin soon nodded. Although he had known that the current emperor would send him away in person, he still couldn't help but feel a little excited when the moment came. The man in front of him was the most powerful figure who was in awe of all living beings in the world and made countless strong men bow to him. He held the power of a country and sat on the territory of the four seas. Looking at the whole world, who could compare with him in terms of identity? Originally, Lin soon had expected that the current emperor must be as majestic as the mountains and seas. But when he met him at this time, he unexpectedly found that the current emperor in front of him could not arouse any fear or scruple at all. But the more it was like this, the more Lin soon sighed with emotion in his heart. He was very clear that the cultivation of the current emperor must have reached an incredible level, so that Lin soon could not feel fear and dread unconsciously. At this time, the great emperor turned around with a gentle smile. "Although this is the first time we've met, I've heard many people talk about you before. Empress Celestial Emperor said that your temperament is unruly and difficult to find. You act recklessly and easily cause trouble. To Tai, you're cunning and vigilant, but your temperament is actually ruthless and decisive to the extreme. If you become an enemy of the Empire, you'll definitely become a formidable character of a generation and bring disaster to the world." Lin soon felt ashamed and scolded in his heart. It was okay for the Empress to say such things to him, but how could Zhao Tailai, the old fox, say such unpleasant things? "The next time I see him, I'll definitely extort some benefits from him." And Jing Xian said, speaking of this, the great emperor's deep and tranquil eyes showed a rare strange expression, as if he was a little emotional. What did she say? Lin soon couldn't help asking. He was really curious about how Zhao Jingxian would judge him. "She said you are you. It doesn't matter what others think of you." After saying this, the great emperor couldn't help laughing. Lin Sun was stunned at first, but he also couldn't help laughing when he thought about it carefully. There was a comfortable feeling of being understood in his heart. Zhao Jingxian, at the thought of this bright and free and easy beautiful woman, Lin Sun had a wonderful feeling in his heart, as if he had found a confidant. He could understand what the other party was thinking without saying it, which really made Lin Sun feel very subtle. Lin Sun didn't notice that his expression at this moment was seen by the great emperor next to him, and the latter's expression also showed a trace of imperceptible complexity. This emotion was somewhat similar to that of a father-in-law seeing his son-in-law for the first time, but it was also a little different, very subtle. Lin Sun suddenly felt uncomfortable all over. When he looked up, he saw that the great emperor had already recovered, so he couldn't find any clue at all. The great emperor said, "In my opinion, what they said is right, but it doesn't matter. A person will change in the end, especially on the path of the great path. Every step forward might cause a change in one's state of mind." Lin Sun deeply agreed. He used to like smiling very much, because he used to think that smiling was the most useful weapon to cover up inner emotions. But now, Lin Sun didn't think so anymore. A person's mental state would undergo a transformation in the end, and this was growth and transformation. On this path towards the Grand Tao, one only had to hold firm to one's heart and act according to one's heart, and it would be sufficient. The great emperor didn't say anything more and ended this topic. The reason why he sent Lin Sun away in person today was not to chat. The ancient desolation realm is vast and boundless. Even those who have stepped into the divine path cannot estimate how vast it is. There are countless geniuses in the ancient desolation realm. If you want to compete for the Great Way, that is indeed the best stage for you. The great emperor looked into the distance, and his voice was indifferent and peaceful. Now, the catastrophe of Tao will come to the world in 10 years, or at most 100 years. It will open the curtain of an unprecedented world of great competition. At that time, some doctrines that have been dormant for many years will also appear in the world again. The ancient desolation territory is destined to become a place where the strong compete for supremacy, and the world will fall into an unprecedented turmoil. Speaking of this, the great emperor suddenly turned around, and a divine light surged in his deep and tranquil eyes. You only need to remember one word when you go to the ancient desolation territory. Which word? Lin Sun was shocked in his heart. Compete. The great emperor gently spat out a word. On his handsome face, there was a rare domineering look of disdain, which was incomparably frightening. The struggle for the Tao is like 100 barges vying for the current. If you fall one step behind, you may never set foot on the top of the Tao in this life. Lin Sun's mood fluctuated, and he firmly remembered this truth. He had known this truth for a long time, but at this moment, when it was said by the great emperor, it made him feel enlightened. If you want to compete for a great fortune in this great world that is about to open, what you need is nothing more than strength. Speaking of this, the great emperor deliberately reminded Lin Sun, in the past, you often used the strategy of borrowing strength to fight strength. This is just a small way. You should remember that in the face of absolute strength, no matter how wise you are and how amazing your strategy is, you are doomed to be smashed. This is the Tao. Strength. Lin Sun murmured. Yes. The transformation of the state of mind, the improvement of cultivation, the strengthening of the soul, and the strengthening of the body, in the final analysis, are nothing more than the changes of the strength you have mastered. This kind of strength can make you a king, fight against the great tribulation of longevity, and even build the Tao and become a sage. What the great emperor said was not a cultivation method, but some insights of cultivation. It was very shallow, but for Lin Sun it seemed very precious. The Tao of heaven is also a kind of strength, but it needs to be comprehended and understood. The Tao of heaven is also a means of using strength, but it needs to be cultivated and controlled. Even if it's the knowledge, experience, and experiences that you have, aren't they also a form of inner strength? With these, you can further understand the true meaning of cultivation. Now you should understand that this strength is by no means simple brute force, but the most simple explanation of cultivation. The great emperor's words made Lin Sun quite uneasy, and he silently remembered them all. This was a kind of teaching that could only be encountered by chance, which deeply touched Lin Sun. The battle of the Tao determines the success or failure of the Tao of heaven is the strength you have. In this great world, there will be unpredictable great fortunes, including a chance to become a supreme king. A supreme king. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes. Exactly. The absolute path of the Tao is reputed to be the strongest path of the Tao in the world. But even during the ancient times, this sort of path of the Tao was too rare and ethereal, and it was practically impossible to realize. However, during this battle between the worlds, this practically legendary Grand Tao will definitely appear in the world. The great emperor looked at Lin Sun and said, "Although you can set foot on this realm now, you just have a glimpse of it. Only when you become a real supreme king can you understand the true meaning of this way. It is definitely not as simple as you think." King was the honorific title for practitioners with the strength of life and death realm. And the Supreme King was naturally the terrible existence who set foot on the supreme way of life and death realm. According to the great emperor, there had never been a Supreme King in the past years. Even in ancient times, the rumors about the Supreme King seemed very ethereal and unreal, and the records about this realm were even more difficult to find and see. But there was no doubt that this realm existed. This was the unanimous conclusion deduced by countless sages from ancient times to the present. And when the great world came, this legendary realm might appear in the world, and it depended on who could fight for it in the end. After silently digesting for a long time, Lin Sun came to his senses and bowed seriously. "Thank you for your guidance, Senior." This kind of gratitude was indeed from the bottom of his heart. If it weren't for the reminder and guidance of the great emperor, he wouldn't know that the so-called Great World Battle had so many rules. The great emperor revealed a secretive smile. "It's not too late to come back and thank me when you set foot on the Supreme King's realm." Come back? Lin Sun was keenly aware that this word was very thought-provoking. The great emperor nodded and said casually, "Yes, when you reach that realm, you will definitely come back again, because only in our lower world, there is an opportunity for you to cultivate at that time." The opportunity for cultivation in the Supreme King's realm? Lin Sun was stunned. The great emperor smiled and said leisurely, "In the depths of the Soul Oblivion Sea, there is the ultimate, one of the 4 great ancient ruins. In the bloodthirsty battlefield of the Empire, there is the mulberry forest that the ancient sages yearned for. Do you think the lower world is as barren and simple as in the eyes of the world? P.S. This is already the final stage of this volume. The contents of these few chapters are really difficult to write. Often, I write and delete and rewrite, in order to pave the way for the new plot of the next volume. The content may be bland and uninteresting, but it is really exhausting. The updates will inevitably be affected by this and become unstable. Please bear with it for the time being.